An entitled jerk demands that a woman gets out of a seat he wants on a public bus, as he kept screaming that he deserved this seat more than anybody else, and that he was not going to move until she got out of the way. And honestly, this is probably the most cringe-worthy experience I've ever had in my entire life. And I really hope I don't deal with this guy ever again. Welcome back to Am I the Jerk, where you get to experience the raw, unfiltered feeling of secondhand embarrassment. And this first story is just oozing with this stuff, dude. It is so weird, and honestly, I think you're gonna love this one. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk if you haven't already, and click the bell to turn on notifications. You don't want to miss a video, man. So please, get comfortable, grab some snacks, get a drink, and let's get started with our first story. Okay, so I live in London, England. This happened yesterday, and my God, did things get weird really fast. A man got on the bus ahead of us, and once we tapped in our cards, we couldn't move past him because the entitled man of this story was arguing with a young lady on the first passenger seat at the front of the bus. Now, it's important to note that this seat is theoretically for two people, but with the way that it's set up, it's just one big seat, narrow enough for maybe two prepubescent children, but not like two fully grown average-sized adults. And this is where literally the entire argument started. He literally didn't let us move past, and I thought at first he was arguing because he was elderly and needed a seat, but no, there were like literally 10 free seats beyond him, so my friend and I just sat down. Now, I would say that I was earwigging the conversation, but he was honestly shouting so loud that I couldn't miss what he was shouting. He then shouted, "Move out of the way, I want to sit." But then a couple of us tried to point out that there were other seats available, to which he shouted, "I want to sit here at the front. I want to see where I'm going." So this wasn't a lack of a seat or the lack of a window seat. It was because this poor woman was sitting in the one seat he wanted, and he obviously felt that she should move for him. Well, she did move aside a little bit so he could squeeze on beside her, but he refused to do that and kept arguing with her, repeating that he still wanted to sit there to see where he was going, and he said it over and over, the entire time looming over this poor woman. Now, the bus driver eventually got fed up with him and told him to go sit down. Then a couple of us spoke up and pointed out that other seats were available and that he wasn't entitled to a preferred seat. Well, eventually he did, sitting opposite this lady, right behind the driver's cab, which was another unoccupied two-person seat. Then suddenly he changed the topic of conversation to his opinion on the Prime Minister, and he did this at the top of his lungs, still looking at the woman who was, by the way, standing her ground, but looking ahead and refusing to engage. And during this conversation that nobody was having with him, he was interspersing his insistence that, yeah, I want that seat really bad, just so he could see where he's going. Now, the poor woman who was on the other side of this argument eventually got off one stop later, and I hope it was because it's where she was getting off anyways, and not because of this idiot. He then waited until she was off and the bus was moving to eventually move to his preferred seat, and then he got off one stop later. Now, it's also worth noting that we had seen him before getting off the bus, and also the day before yelling at cyclists to get off the pavement and go onto the road. So it seems like this guy really enjoys making his demands known to pretty much anybody who will listen. Dude, I will never understand anybody who acts like this in public, especially over public seating on a bus, dude. What are we doing? Your life has got to be so miserable to be like, I want to sit there. I want to see where we're going. Get out of my seat. And it's like, dude, no. If they sit down, that's their seat. They literally have priority over it because their butt hit it first. So please, if you're someone out there who's even done this even one time, please don't be that person. Be a better person and not a piece of garbage like this guy in the story, because this is humiliating for everybody involved, whether you're the person getting yelled at or you're experiencing the secondhand embarrassment on the side like the original poster. If you like Am I the Jerk and what we're doing over here, please check out Am I the Genius. It's going to be linked down below in the description. Just click and go ahead and subscribe to them. And also, if you have your own stories you want to submit, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you want to submit your own stories. We're reading them all the time and we're picking out the best ones, so trust me, we would love to hear what you have to say. My boyfriend has started calling me fat and making fun of my weight after I got depressed and gained a few pounds. And now I'm honestly kind of devastated by this and I don't know what to make of it. Here's what's currently going on. Okay, so my boyfriend of 2 years has been calling me fat multiple times a day. And yes, we do live together. I've always held myself to high standards and I've wanted to look my best. And in the past 6 months, I've noticed I've really struggled with my mental health. And because of that, I've gained a noticeable amount of weight. We're talking like maybe about 15 pounds. For reference, I'm about 5'9" and I weigh 150 150 pounds. I talk about how I've gained weight and I'm not happy with it, but I still want to be appreciated and loved while I figure it out. But instead, he says things like, "Oh, I make too much money to have a fat girlfriend. You're the fattest you've ever been. Yeah, she's pretty and you're just fat." He also calls me a piggy or fat throughout the day if I'm doing something that he's upset with or if I'm eating. It's gotten to a point where I feel like he knows the comments will hurt me more than anything else, and he will say it until I start to cry. And even when I'm crying, he won't understand or even care. And this has been multiple weeks at this point. I'm honestly so drained and I'm sad. I'm not happy with myself and I don't understand why he's so cruel. I want to be alone all the time and it's not fun to hang out with him anymore. And at this point, I just don't know what to do. Okay, bro, your boyfriend sucks. This is not a good person. Anyone, and I mean anybody who's going around talking about you like that is just not a good person. Because clearly this is upsetting you, like this is not a good thing for you, and you're obviously depressed and you're going through it. And the fact that he's like, I don't know, rubbing salt in the wound is really alarming, and that is something I would not ignore. So yeah, your boyfriend sounds like a giant walking red flag, and I would definitely not ignore that anytime soon. Because for the record, if I was in your shoes, I would definitely dump him over this. An entitled jerk literally ruined my laundry right before it was done drying. So I decided to get some petty revenge by returning the favor and ruining theirs, making them think twice about messing with people's laundry in the future. Here's how I did it. Okay, so this happened a few years ago when I was living in the dorms at college. If you've ever done laundry in a dorm, then you already know. It's basically a gladiator arena with lint. The dryers were not cheap, so I always try to be strategic and economical. I would set a timer, I'd show up early, just so I could get my clothes out right when it finished. Well, one day I came back a few minutes before my cycle was done with my bag of snack-sized Doritos, feeling very responsible, only to find my clothing had been pulled out early and dumped onto a table. And yeah, this is annoying already, but trust me, it gets way better. Because guess what? The table was covered in a puddle of soda. So now my almost dry clothes were damp, sticky, and smelled like Pepsi. And let me tell you something, I was furious. Not mildly inconvenienced furious, more like, oh, I paid for that dryer time and now I have to rewash everything furious. Now, I'm not a destructive person, but I do believe in educational pettiness. I then noticed the culprit's clothes were still in the dryer. So I added a full bag of snack-sized Dorito into the laundry load. I shut the door and I set it to high heat and let the cycle continue. When that dryer finished, I just so happened to be hanging out in the lounge outside the laundry area. And my God, a girl came out looking angry with a laundry basket full of orange-streaked Dorito smelling clothing. Now, was it mature? No. Did it restore balance to the universe? Also no. But did it make me feel better in that exact moment? Absolutely. So the moral of the story is don't touch other people's laundry, or you might just end up smelling like a walking snack aisle. Okay, I love this kind of pettiness. I live for it. Absolutely am a fan of this. It's not that hard to just wait your turn, dude. You don't take someone else's clothing out and be like, it's close enough. This is dry enough. I'll just put my stuff in there. And then land it on a puddle of soda. Like, no, dude, that's unacceptable. That is inappropriate. So the fact that there's some good old-fashioned karma coming along and like, I don't know, getting back at the person who screwed you over, like, dude, that's delicious and I'm all in favor of that. My boyfriend's parents, after a family trip, called me selfish, all because I was really tired on the last day. And now I'm starting to rethink this relationship because I've done so much for them, especially over the 4 years I've been dating their son. And now I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I've been with my boyfriend for about 4 years. And along with his parents, we recently took a 12-day trip to Japan together that his parents paid for. I've spent every weekend at their house. I've had holidays with them. I helped take care of his elderly grandpa for months. I invited his mom to workout classes with me and watch movies with them, and have always been kind, respectful, and appreciative. And they've also been nothing but kind to me. On the trip itself, I went along with whatever the family wanted to do. I had a list of things that I wanted to do, but I managed my expectations early on because I realized I'm on a group trip, and it's not super realistic to do everything I want. I was polite, grateful, participated, and I didn't complain. But by the end of the trip, I was motion sick at times and physically drained from all the walking and the traveling. There were a couple of days where I got quieter and had more like, I don't know, low energy, but I still talked and had conversations with everybody, and I just spent more time self-managing my emotions and just being a little more to myself. One of the days, while everyone was taking pictures of viewpoints at the temple, I sat down off to the side to rest because I was really tired and just not feeling great. Well, after that, my boyfriend's dad became completely withdrawn from me for like 2 days. He ignored me when I said hello, refused to look at me or even sit by me when there was an empty seat next to me and everyone else was sitting down. He excluded me at meals and was warm to literally everybody else. His mom was nicer to my face, but later agreed with him privately. The day after the trip, they told my boyfriend they thought I was selfish, only happy when I got to do things I wanted, and that I was moody on and off. This honestly shocked me because I spent 11 out of the 12 days doing what they wanted, and even during the trip, I was still trying to be respectful and kind, even thanking them multiple times on my off days for bringing me on the trip despite feeling bad. What hurts the most is how quickly they seem to turn on me after knowing me for years, and after everything I've done to build a relationship with them. I understand that maybe I wasn't my best bubbly self every second of the trip, but I feel like I was judged harshly and treated horribly by his dad for being tired and human. So what would you do in this situation? I feel like the power dynamic of my boyfriend's dad, who paid for the trip, punching down on me as a guest, who's also the youngest in the group, was really unforgivable. What should I do? Okay, someone in the comments section pretty much said exactly what I was gonna say, but my dude, group trips always turn out to be either really good for people or really bad. And spending 2 weeks with people who are not family is only gonna result in someone finally snapping sooner than later. And it seems like your dad just decided, oh yeah, she's being a jerk, so I'm gonna say that you're selfish. When in reality, you're just tired, you're exhausted. You spent 2 weeks in Japan, dude, you're walking all over the place. You're literally just beat down to your socks, bro. It's not that serious. And it's not that deep. Like, you're not being selfish, like you're just tired. And it really does seem like, yeah, they've kind of like bailed on everything they've ever known about you all over a trip to Japan for 2 weeks. You know, the place that's notorious for, I don't know, having to walk everywhere. And if you're not used to that, then it's gonna be a struggle. So in my opinion, I think it might be time for your boyfriend to step up and defend you and be like, no, it's not like that. She was just tired. Or at least have something good to say about you to be like, no, I stand by my girlfriend, like I care about her. She's not selfish, she's like really a kind person. And then remind him of all the things that you've done for them. Because this is some really toxic behavior and you definitely do not deserve it. My professor said that any source is valid as long as I cite it properly. So I decided to use him as a source and I cited him in my next paper, which definitely caused some problems for him as he realized that I was in the right. Here's what happened. Okay, so this was my junior year in my research methods class, and for the sake of the story, I'll call my professor Dr. K. Now, Dr. K had this thing where he would make bold claims during lectures without citing anything, and then get annoyed if students push back on it. Classic, oh, I have a PhD, so my word is the source kind of energy. At some point, he made a sweeping statement about consumer behavior that directly contradicted something I had read in 2 separate peer-reviewed papers. So I raised my hand and mentioned this, and he said, and I quote, "In this class, any source is valid as long as you cite it correctly. The quality of your argument is what really matters." So I thought to myself, okay, let's do this. I then wrote my next paper arguing the opposite of his claim. The primary source for the counter-argument was a transcript that I had made of his own lecture from 3 weeks earlier, where he had said something that, read carefully, actually undermined his newer position. I cited it with his last name, his first initial, the class lecture, the course number, the university name, and the date. And I formatted it exactly according to the citation guide he gave us on day 1. He eventually handed back the papers with written comments, and mine said, "Oh, interesting argument, strong structure." And then at the bottom, he said, "This citation is not acceptable, please see me." So I went to see him and I brought the citation guide with me. I showed him the format and I also showed him his own quote. I then asked him which part of the citation requirements had I failed to meet. There was a long pause, but then he changed my grade from a B+ to an A-. And then he told me that the citation was technically valid, but in poor taste. Well, I've never felt more seen by a grade in my life because this guy deserved to get shut down, and I'm glad I got the adjustment. Okay, I love this so much because, dude, what kind of professor is this? Seriously, this is obnoxious. I would hate dealing with this. You're literally just trying to learn the correct stuff for your major, whatever it is, and this guy's really standing up there acting like, oh, I'm God, everything I say is right. So I love the way the original poster got back at them. I love that they shut them down using his own, like, I don't know, system against him, and essentially put him in a place in a way he definitely was not expecting. An entitled customer at a credit union I work at literally provided the worst experience I've ever had in my life. And it's honestly astonishing how entitled some people can be because this guy was really bad. Here's what happened. Okay, first off, I want to say that it really seems like people forgot how to behave civilly after COVID. But that idea is nothing like this person that I just needed to vent about. If you walk into a bank or a credit union, they may ask you to remove your hat or sunglasses so they can verify you. And that's what I did with someone on the drive-thru. He asked why he needs to do that, and I explained. And he only gave me like a second with his hat and sunglasses off for me to verify his IDs this same as the person sitting in the car. He literally just put it right back on after like not any time at all. So it's like, okay, whatever. Some people just get upset of the hat rule. But then he started going off on me by being like, oh, do you need a blood sample and a birth certificate while you're at it? Or something along those lines. Now, I just want to get him out of here really quickly. So I do the transaction that he asked me to do. And when I try to explain I need a signature on the copy of the receipt that I'm going to send out, he literally starts cursing at me. I send the receipt out, I get it back, I give him his information back, but this honestly just takes the cake afterwards. Like the true entitlement of this interaction. After he gets everything, like in a fit of rage, he takes the tube for the drive-thru and throws it into the pavement. A good Samaritan eventually brought it back before any of us had to go out to get it, and I'm forever grateful for that person. But the one that I helped out didn't care. He literally just drove off. Like the entitlement he must have had to treat me like that and treat someone else's property like that too. Imagine if the tube was glass instead of plastic. Like it really could have broken. And this literally all comes back to the fact that I asked him to remove his hat. Like people seem to not know how to behave post-COVID at all. But this really does take the cake in terms of rudeness because this was so over the top. Dude, people really do suck. Like when you get a bad customer or like a bad client of some kind, it really shows. Like some people are mildly rude, but this is taking it to a whole nother level. Holy crap. Imagine having a life so miserable that you literally take the tube thing out of like the drive-thru and throwing it on the ground, all because someone tried to verify you are who you say you are. Like that is weird. I would be thanking the people holding my money and being like, yeah, thank you so much for making sure I was who I say I am. Like I don't want people taking my money. Like I'm glad they're trying to verify it. So please, if you're like this guy, then don't be like this guy. It's embarrassing, it's really rude, and there's just no need for it. Am I the jerk for confronting my neighbor about his son tearing up my lawn constantly with his dirt bikes, only for him to then pull the card of him saying, oh, I'm a cop and this is fine? Because this whole situation has me in a tailspin and I just don't know what to make of it. Here's basically how we got here. Okay, for starters, I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood where people mostly just keep to themselves. And for the past year, I've been fixing up my lawn after it was in rough shape when I moved in. A couple of months ago, my neighbor's teenage son, who's like maybe 16 years old, started riding dirt bikes around the street. And at first it was just noise, so who cares? But then I started noticing tire tracks cutting across my yard. Eventually, I caught them doing it on purpose, using my lawn as a shortcut while turning. Now, I went to their dad calmly and explained the damage, and he just said to me, relax, I'm a cop, I know how this works. And that's the part that really gets me. Like, what does that even have to do with my lawn getting destroyed? Like, that was supposed to shut me up or make him untouchable? Like, the rules just don't apply to him or his kids? If anything, that should have meant that he understood boundaries better, and not use them as an excuse just to ignore them. Last week, after they tore deep ruts through the wet ground near my walkway again, I documented everything and reported it through the HOA and the proper channels. It turns out the bikes weren't even allowed for that kind of use, and once it got flagged, the situation escalated fast. Fines were then issued, and they were warned about possible impound if it continued. And guess what? The writing stopped almost immediately after that. Now, if I'm being completely honest, that part hasn't really sat right with me either. Knowing he's a cop and has access to weapons, if you know what I mean, made the whole situation feel way more intimidating than it should have been. I didn't want to escalate things in person because it felt like he was already leaning on his position to push back. And that added this weird layer where I had to think twice about every single interaction. I shouldn't have to feel uneasy just asking someone to keep their kids off of my property, but that's exactly what it turned into. So am I really the jerk here? Like, did I cross a line by like, I don't know, confronting my neighbor and telling him to get his kid off my property? Because I'm really not sure what to make of this. Okay, in my opinion, dude, you are not the jerk. If anything, I would call this guy's bluff. Like, I would almost want to report him to the police station and be like, yeah, this guy is almost allowing his son to drive his stupid dirt bike through my yard. And I'm not a fan of this. Like, I really don't like this, and this guy tried to make it happen almost. Or something like that, because I don't give a crap who you are. The second you say, oh, I'm a cop, it's fine, I know how this works. That's the second, especially in today's day and age, where I'm gonna be like, oh, bull crap, I don't trust that at all. There was a time where I trusted that, but nowadays, absolutely not, dude. That doesn't hold nearly enough weight in my mind for me to trust that person. And it sucks because I would argue that like a majority of cops are good people and they're just trying to do the right thing, but it's the bad apples that make the rest of them look bad, where it's like, okay, I don't know if I can trust this guy or not. But regardless, no, you're not the jerk at all. This kid and his dad are jerks for trying to justify this behavior, and honestly, I think you did the right thing by saying something. Am I the jerk for feeling humiliated after my boyfriend made me leave our place in front of his friends? Because right now I feel very hurt and I just don't know what to do do about this. Here's what happened. Okay, so I've been dating my boyfriend for almost 3 years now. We both go to university and technically have separate homes, but he asked me to basically move in with him, and I've been staying at his place most of the time for almost a year. I keep a lot of my daily things there, and I treat it like my home. Well, yesterday we had a small argument. It was nothing serious, but during it, he said he didn't want to see me. But later on, we made up and everything seemed fine again. Well, today I had an exam, and before it, he told me that he was going to hang out with his friends, and I said okay. After my exam, I went back to his place like usual, and when I got there, I messaged him, and that's when he told me to go to my house because his friends were coming over. I then explained that I had an early morning the next day to prepare things for his birthday, and I had university meetings, and I just asked him if I could please go upstairs, take a shower, and then go to sleep. I made it clear that I didn't want to hang out with them or interrupt, I just wanted to rest. Well, guess what? He didn't even respond to that message. And then when he arrived in person with his friends, he told me that I needed to leave. I then went outside to go get my things, and all of his friends were sitting in the car watching while I grabbed a bag and left. And I gotta be honest, I felt really embarrassed and honestly humiliated. He asked me for a kiss goodbye, and I said no, and I told him that we would talk later. When I got home, I realized I forgot my toothbrush, so I went back and he wasn't even there. He literally went back to his friend's place because one of them forgot a charger. So I don't understand why I had to leave in the first place if they weren't even going to stay there. Well, now he's saying that I'm being ridiculous and overreacting because he just wanted space, and even said his friends didn't expect me to act crazy. What's also bothering me is that we've been talking about getting an apartment together after university, and this situation is making me question how that would even work if this is how he handles space. Now, trust me, I get it. I understand wanting space, but this felt really disrespectful, especially since he's the one who asked me to live with him, and I wasn't even trying to interrupt. I was just trying to sleep. So am I really the jerk for being upset that he humiliated me, or for even feeling like that? Because right now I'm just so confused. I don't know what to do. Okay, if you've got this repertoire with your boyfriend where it's like, yeah, I spend the night all the time, we have fun together, we like, I don't know, share the same space, and then suddenly he's like, you can't come over anymore, I've got friends coming over, and then when you come back for your toothbrush and he's not even there, like, bro, that absolutely is a giant red flag. That would scream to me like, oh yeah, he's cheating on me, that's exactly what's going on. Or he's planning on breaking up or something like that. Like, I don't know if this is him quiet quitting this relationship, but it kind of seems like that's what's going on. So in my opinion, I think it's worth investigating. Like, you're definitely not the jerk for feeling humiliated. This is so unbelievably inappropriate. This should have been figured out in private instead of in front of his friends. Like, who wants to have that kind of situation happen? So yeah, your boyfriend's being toxic, and I would be immediately suspicious that something else is absolutely going on. An entitled worker at a bookstore I was visiting called me creepy and weird for going into their kids section and looking for books for children. But despite the fact that I was only trying to get books for my 5-year-old cousin, I decided to get some revenge by not only getting her in trouble with her manager, but also humiliating this employee in the process. Here's what happened. Many years ago when I was 19 years old, I was at my local Borders bookstore searching for a children's book or two for my little cousin's birthday. He was turning 5 and really enjoyed reading whatever kids books he could at his young age, so I thought I would support the habit. So I enter the Borders and head straight to the kids section, and I look around, picking up some books that looked like they would interest my little cousin, and even laughing at some of the funny ones that I saw on the covers or the first couple of pages I flipped through. Now, as I was minding my own business, I get a very firm poke on the back of my shoulder from a very disgruntled employee. The employee starts to tell me that I must leave the kids section immediately because it is only for kids 12 and under, and how inappropriate I was being, and also how creepy I was being for looking at children's books. I let her go on and on until I had had enough and decided it was time for some very petty revenge. I let her finish one last sentence, and then I said to her, I totally understand. I'll make sure to leave the kids section as no adults are allowed to be here. So I literally took about 10 steps to my left, which put me outside of the clearly carpeted boundaries of the kids section. I stood there as the employee kept looking at me, and as soon as I saw a mom and dad walk into the kids section with their 2 kids, I regretfully informed them that the kids could stay and look around the section, but the parents would have to leave as they were over the age of 12. Now, they of course were questioning my authority to tell them to leave the kids section, and rightfully so. And as luck would have it, the employee from before came charging over apologizing to them for my remarks and explained that the kids section is not only for individuals under the age of 12. Well, as soon as I heard those words leave her mouth, I of course questioned her, and I asked why she would have told me the opposite just a few minutes ago and have me leave the kids section. Now, at this point, the couple just demanded to speak to a manager, and again, rightfully so. The manager came over and asked for everyone's side of things, and when I told him I was there to buy children's books for my cousin, he asked why there was a problem in the first place. So I replied by saying, I'm not sure. Ask your employee. She's the one who approached me for looking at books. I was just informing other customers of the store policy policy so that they didn't get reprimanded like me. Well, the manager immediately turned red and walked over to his employee. I couldn't hear everything he said, but I could imagine him saying, "We'll talk about this later. This is the second time now." So I can only imagine what trouble she got into. After he finished telling his employee that they would like to speak later, he came back over to me and the couple. I then started this part of the conversation off by apologizing to the couple for making them and their kids my case in point, to which they said they understand now that they see what happened. The manager apologized to them as well, and then to me for his employee's behavior, and explained that there is no such rule or policy, and that I was free to go into the kids section, get whatever books I want, and then check out up front. He offered to bring any children's books that I knew I would purchase to the front register and hold them for me so that he didn't waste any more of my time, and so that I could do one last quick visual sweep of what kids' books were on the shelves. After that, I thanked him profusely, and I told him not to worry about my time, because I've got plenty of time on my hands. I then sat down in one of the kids' chairs in the kids section, grabbed a book off the shelf behind me, and sat down staring straight at the employee until they walked away. Now anyways, fast forward and this Borders is now closed, so in the end I got the last laugh because that employee doesn't have a job there anymore. Wow, that seriously is so messed up, it's not even funny. I know this is painted as like a funny situation, but can you imagine going into a bookstore and having an employee be like, "Wow, you're being creepy standing there. Get out of the kids section, you're not allowed in there." It's like, dude, what are you talking about right now? The fact that she would profile the original poster like that is so uncalled for, and I'm honestly astonished that they weren't fired right there on the spot. But honestly, I love the way you handled this, and I love that you embarrassed her exactly the way she embarrassed you, because in my opinion, she absolutely deserved it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My 4th grade teacher literally called me the devil after I refused to help the classroom bully with any of his homework. So I decided to get some petty revenge by literally proving her right, where I signed her up for every psychic, tarot card reading, and medium service I could possibly find just to bother her to no end. Here's what happened. Okay, so this was about 9 years ago, and a separate post on another sub about prank phone calls brought this roaring back into my memory. I had a bully in 4th grade who was absolutely adored by our math teacher. She always made me help him, even though she knew we didn't get along. Anytime we got into it, with him bullying me and me standing up for myself and the other kids that he bullied, she would treat me like garbage afterwards. She was hyper-religious, and as a disclaimer, I'm not anti-religion, as I do have religious heritage myself, but she would refer to me as the devil whenever I upset her or her favorite student. Well, one day the student and I really got into it in gym class, and I fought back. Like, seriously fought back. I was stopped by the gym teacher, but of course the math teacher made me pay for it later by once again calling me the devil and treating me like garbage. So you know what? I decided to get some petty revenge by proving her right. I then spent a couple of weeks compiling a list of all the online psychic and tarot card readings and medium services I could find. Literally everything I knew that she would be against. Then, after the dust from the gym incident had settled, I signed her up for each and every one of these using her school-issued email. And you know what? The best part about it is that I never got caught. But I do remember hearing about some extra email protocols being put in place for teachers, and afterwards I smiled as sweetly as I could at her every single time we interacted. I laid the cheese on thick and started purposefully misleading my bully whenever I helped him with math, all while watching her nerves and his grades spiral into the drain. Oh my gosh, your 4th grade teacher sounds like a nightmare. Like, don't get me wrong, kids at that age can be absolute little demons, but you don't say it out loud. You don't look at the kid and be like, "You're the devil." You say that in private amongst other teachers, like that's really how you do it. So the fact that she verbalized that to one of the kids she was supposed to be teaching is crazy to me. It makes no sense, and there's just no good reason for that. But I've got to say, with all things considered, I love the way that you handled this, and I love the fact that you started misleading that bully, because there is no reason you ever should have had to put up with that, because the way she treated you was incredibly toxic. Am I the jerk for not apologizing to my sister just to make my mom happy and keep the peace? Because right now she's guilt-tripping me incredibly hard. Here's what happened. Okay, so me and my sister have always had a tumultuous relationship. We fight, we make up, we get really close, and then we fight again, and that circle just continues over and over again. In fact, we are polar opposites of each other. She's more of the rough and tough type of person. She has snakes, lots of tattoos, she shaved half of her head, and she works in construction. Whereas I'm more of the girly and rigid type. I like to read, I have a kid, and I work in the beauty industry. For a while, I've been expanding my business, and while expanding, I needed to have some different flooring installed. After a few independent contractors fell through, I decided to ask my sister. And normally, I wouldn't mix family and business, but the deadline was approaching fast and I had no one else to ask. My sister was shortly between between jobs, so I asked if she would be willing to do this for me while she had some spare time. She told me it wasn't a problem and she could get it done within my time frame, which was about 3 weeks before the deadline. With the deadline approaching, I asked her when she would be able to finish the floor and I got no response. The next day I asked again and I still got no response again. I repeated this the next day and finally I got a response from her. She told me that she didn't have the time after all because she has gotten the dates mixed up. Mind you, this was 4 days before my deadline, so I flipped out. The fight escalated and I told her that I was done with her and I really meant it. This was the last straw for me and I'm happy to be low or no contact with her. Now here's where I might be the jerk. I am really close with my parents. I see them daily, I go over for dinner about twice a week, and they babysit my kid every Tuesday. My sister is at my parents' place a lot too, so we're bound to run into each other. I'm okay with just downright ignoring her and doing my own thing because it's mostly just for a few minutes. I mean, she never stays for dinner and never has. But my sister keeps making snide remarks towards me. Now, my mom hates conflict and can't stand the thought of us fighting, and she told me verbatim that I'm in the right, but I shouldn't have reacted the way that I did. She wants me to apologize to keep the peace, but I just downright told her that was not going to happen under any circumstance. She asked me if I could just suck it up for her and the family, and I again told her no, and said that she should probably tell my sister to stop making comments so that there would be peace. She didn't agree with me and started to guilt trip me. Okay, so no Easter dinners, no family shoot, no holidays together, and so on. And I told her that was up to her, and I would be fine just ignoring her and acting semi-normal. But she didn't want to go that way though, which I do kind of get. So seriously, am I the jerk for refusing to apologize? Because at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I do see both sides of this, but I think you are more right than your mom. For starters, you could just apologize and get it over with, but also vow to never deal with that woman ever again. If it were me doing this, it absolutely would be a fake apology, and I would just slowly cut this lady out of my life entirely. But to me, I don't think that's the strongest reaction, because I think the way you're doing this right now, in my opinion, is the very best option, because your sister literally screwed you over, and if you don't hold your ground right now, you never will get a chance to do that ever again. And also, what on earth are you supposed to apologize for? You didn't do anything wrong. She's the one that strung you along all the way until 4 days before your deadline. Like, she nearly ruined everything you're trying to do, and now this is somehow your problem to have to like try and amend the situation. It's like, no, she's an idiot, and you definitely should not be the one to apologize. It should be her. So no, you're not the jerk at all. I think you're completely in the right for standing your ground and saying, hey, I'll at least be amicable, but I really will be ignoring her. Because in my opinion, you didn't do anything wrong. And entitled Karen quite literally ruins my vacation to Egypt by constantly criticizing everybody around her in a way that forced me to snap and speak out, as I seriously could not take it any longer. Here's what happened. Okay, so this incident took place in 2007. I was 49 years old and my 25-year marriage had ended 6 months earlier after it was discovered that she had been cheating with a high school crush that she reconnected with at an alumni dinner a few years earlier. We sold the matrimonial house, each bought our own place, and moved on with our lives. So my therapist told me, look, you're under stress. Take a long exotic vacation. Travel was something I was used to, and I'd already done many Amazing Race-style adventure trips with my family, and eventually I settled on a Gap Adventures trip through Egypt. 15 days with 15 people and a guided tour. And this sounded good, since Egypt was someplace I was always intrigued with. I hopped on a plane to Amsterdam, spent the day sightseeing, and then I was on to Cairo, where I then met up with the rest of the group Sunday night. So there was me from Canada, a middle-aged married couple, and a couple of young party girls from Toronto. There was also a young professional couple who worked at Blackberry from Waterloo, a middle-aged married couple from Australia who also brought his brother, a female couple from Alberta, a single lady from Quebec, a single lady from British Columbia, and finally a young single guy from Washington, D.C. So definitely people from all walks of life. We met at the staging hotel and introduced ourselves. I mentioned I was there to experience Egypt and nothing more. So on Monday, we toured the Cairo Museum and the pyramids. And on Monday night, we took a train to Aswan. Tuesday was free time and then a sunset sailing on the Nile. On Wednesday, we had the morning free. I had walked the streets alone the night before and the morning of, just to see and experience Egyptian life. I didn't hang with the rest of the group because all they did was sit together at the bar of whatever hotel we were staying at and drink beer each moment of their free time. But I was there to experience Egypt, and I figured that I could drink when I get back home. I mingled and interacted with the locals. I stopped at cafes and had coffee, tea, and bought delicious sandwiches from a street vendor. I had one on the spot and I kept another one for later. Also, it's important to note that I'm hypoglycemic, meaning that my blood sugar drops rather quickly, so I have to eat pretty regularly. Well, fast forward and I came back to the hotel and we checked out, where I then walked to the waterfront and boarded the sailboats on the Nile, which would be our home for the next 3 days and 2 nights, and sailing was starting at noon. The group spread out on 2 different ships, and as we set sail, I started to eat the second sandwich that I bought. Well, someone we will call Tracy from Alberta saw me and immediately went to our tour guide. "Are we getting fed on this boat?" The tour guide said, "Yes, in about an hour, we will pull off to the West Bank and we will have lunch." Well, Tracy turns to me, her lips pursed tight, and with a look of pure hate in her eyes. She then screams at me, "Why did you bring food when they will have food? Are you that stupid?" I looked at her in puzzlement. I said to her, "I have to eat every few hours. I've got blood sugar issues. But also, what business of yours is it what I do?" And when I said that, she turned away in disgust. Later that afternoon, as we were tacking into the wind heading north, I pulled a cigarette pack size multi-band radio out from my backpack to quietly listen to local Egyptian radio. Well, Tracy saw me again and decided to chime in. She said to me, "You don't honestly think you're gonna pick up Canadian stations all the way from here, do you?" Well, I looked at her and I said, "I'm listening to local stations, but again, why do you care?" And after I said that, Tracy turns away in disgust. We then spend the night with a ship pulled up along the West Bank, and we were told to go number 1, if you know what I mean, in the sandy dunes about 100 feet away. So I took my small LED flashlight out to see my way, pointing the beam down, and I found my way back to the boat. Tracy then said to me, "Put that flashlight away, you are ruining everybody's night vision." But you know what? I just ignored her. Tracy was in her early 20s and was also with her companion, a severely quiet woman of a similar age who probably didn't say more than 10 words to anyone the entire trip. We eventually made it to Luxor, and unfortunately, Tracy was on my boat, never stopping her critical, condescending motor mouth chatter, criticizing everything and everyone. And you know what? Nobody stood up to her. She continued to berate me and a few others every chance she got. She then starts turning one against the other with gossip. We complained to the tour guide who told us it is not his place to interfere, but eventually I had finally had enough. And while on the bus to Cairo, after she started on me sitting on the wrong side of the bus, instead of where she thought I and a few others should be sitting, I decided to let her have it. I told her to leave me alone, to stop ruining everyone's vacation with her endless commentary about everything all the time. And trust me, she did not like that, but she did ignore me after that. Now, it turns out the Toronto couple cannot have children, so no matter where we stopped, they would seek out impoverished children and give them school supplies as a kindness gesture. But Tracy wouldn't have any of it and came down hard on the couple, saying that it wasn't up to them to give things without clearing it with the parents, lest they be accused of doing something sketchy. The Blackberry couple went out on their own one night in Luxor to a Chinese restaurant along the Nile. Well, Tracy heard about it and yelled at them by saying, "Why in the world would you come all the way to Egypt and go to a Chinese restaurant?" For the record, the tour guide was taking us to third-rate restaurants, getting a kickback from the owners, and then pocketing the budget difference. So basically, we were starving by the end of the trip. We went to Alexandria, then back to Cairo, and then across to Sinai, ending up in Dahab. The Australians had had enough and ended up leaving the group. No one was talking to anyone at this point except for Tracy, who continued her assault on other members of the group for every infraction that went against her incredibly pinheaded, narrow-minded, ignorant view of life and the world. We returned to the staging hotel in Cairo, and everyone parted ways and returned home. Over the following months, as some of us reconnected on Facebook, the topic was always Tracy and how her bitterness had ruined an otherwise amazing experience. Ever since that trip in 2007, I have made 32 trips to Europe, as well as the Middle East and Asia, whether that's solo or with a friend. And the last 9, I've gone with my new wife. In fact, we repeated the entire Egypt trip 2 years ago this week on our own. We looked at group trips in Morocco, Kenya, Patagonia, and each time, I shudder with the thought of another Tracy ruining the experience and decided to book something for the two of us instead of dealing with that ever again. Man, I can't imagine spending all that money, going literally around the world, and then having that entire trip ruined by some idiot who couldn't keep her mouth shut. Like seriously, the fact that the tour guide didn't say anything is honestly obnoxious. Like, I don't know about you, but if I'm giving a tour, I would want everybody to be happy. And if one of the guests is like disturbing everybody else, then they have got to either like shape up and fix their attitude, or they've got to go home or something like that. Because what you described is something that no one should ever have to deal with, especially with all the money I can imagine you spent just to go on this trip in the first place. Am I the jerk for getting into a fight with my fiance's mom and sister after I cleaned up their mess for nearly 2 hours? Because right now I'm being painted to be the bad guy, and at this point I seriously do not know what to do. Here's what happened. So me and my fiance are currently living in his parents' basement to save money for a house. We've been here for about a year, and at first everything was great. His family seemed genuinely happy to get to know me, would invite me to dinner often, and it felt like our relationship was growing in a really positive way. Lately though, things have shifted. shifted. I feel like they're just completely uninterested in anything I say now. One of the ongoing issues involves his sister, who is bipolar and very OCD, and she uses the laundry constantly. One time, I moved her laundry because we needed to do ours, and I put it in a hamper that was already in the laundry room. Well, she got upset and said it was a dirty hamper, which I didn't even know at the time. We agreed after that to put her laundry in a plastic bag if we needed to move it, and honestly, fair enough, but her laundry is constantly in there. Another thing is that she often comes into the basement to take tobacco chops, which is basically bowls of tobacco inside of a pipe. And since I've moved in, she's started leaving piles of clothing, blankets, and shoes all over the couch. A lot of the clothes are actually ones that I gave her, but she's never taken them back upstairs. And lately, I've noticed it started to smell like smoke down here. Well, yesterday, I got into one of those cleaning moods. My fiance and I have been house sitting for my coworker this week, so none of the mess in the house was ours. When we got back, the kitchen was disgusting, and it literally took me 2 hours to clean it. There were dead flies, trash in the sinks, both sinks and both dishwashers completely full, and food that smelled completely awful. His dad, who's been out of town, is usually the one who does the cleaning, and I really just didn't want him to come home to that. Now, we don't pay rent or contribute financially here, as they've refused it, so I try to contribute by helping out however I can. After cleaning the kitchen, I was still in the cleaning zone, and I went down to our basement space, and I decided to clean up the couch and put all of the clothing, including the blankets that smell like smoke, as well as 7 pairs of shoes into a bag, and I placed it by her door, just like my fiance's dad had told me to do before. Meanwhile, my fiance had just washed the blankets for me. Well, 2 hours later, his sister came storming downstairs, where she started slamming doors, throwing her shoes at the wall, and loudly talking on the phone to her mom, which was clearly on purpose so that I would hear it. She was cussing and talking garbage about me very openly, and this is not the first time I've heard her or his mom talk about me behind my back. Now, I didn't tell my fiance right away because he was at work. In the past, when I brought up drama, like the laundry issue, he got annoyed that I bothered him while he was working, so instead, I decided to keep quiet. Later that day, he called me to say his mom wanted to go out to dinner and asked me to go upstairs and ask about the plans. I then told him that I didn't feel comfortable going upstairs at the moment, and I calmly explained why. Well, once I did that, he was pissed. He called his mom and sister yelling at them, and when he got home, it escalated even more. I heard yelling that was completely out of control. His mom said it was petty for me to move her stuff, but I'm sorry, it's been down here for months, and it smells like smoke in my living space. She also said to me, "You just work my son up and get him mad at us," which wasn't my intention at all. I even told my fiance to calm down and go downstairs. I mean, I've gone from living alone to being around an entire family, so it's been a really hard adjustment for me. Then I overheard his mom say that I'm a hoarder, and that apparently people who come into the house have to look at that crap. Now, when I moved in, the basement was an absolute mess, but I've kept it clean and decorated it super cute. I also furnished a full apartment before this, so I've just got more stuff than my fiance because I lived alone. Well, I'm thankful my fiance defended me, but now I feel like somehow this is all my fault. Like I'm the reason there's now a giant fight in the family. It really hurts that they think I'm petty or trying to stir up drama when that's just not who I am. I have zero drama with anyone else in my life. So anyways, we're all supposed to have a talk when his dad gets back, and I'm honestly dreading it. So seriously, how do I handle this, and am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I don't know what to do. You are not the jerk. This is so dumb. His sister is so obnoxious it's not even funny. Because here's the thing, if she really doesn't like people touching her stuff, then maybe, just maybe, she can pick it up and take care of it. She can move it to her own room and clutter it wherever she wants. And just look at the way she acted. This is literally an adult woman throwing things around the house and being like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they touched my crap." So no, you're not the jerk here, you haven't done anything wrong, and the fact that she would act that way, in my opinion, says a lot about her and totally shows her true colors, because she and her mom are incredibly toxic. My toxic friend finds out that my dad passed away and only called me to try and confirm that information instead of trying to reach out and give their condolences. So as a result, I decided to end our friendship because I literally could not stand the fact that she only called to try and gossip about my dead father. And at this point, I'm not sure if I made the right decision or if I'm justified for doing things the way that I did. Here's what happened. To start things out, a few months ago, my father passed away. I was on his bedside and it was at 5 o'clock in the morning. He has been battling an aggressive disease for a while, and his partner called me because his situation worsened overnight. I immediately drove home the night before, but he didn't make it to the morning. At the moment, all I wanted to do was cry and mourn and figure out what to do next. divorced. My parents are divorced, and my mom was in another state, so it was left up to me to make the arrangements all while grieving at the same time. And of course, I called my mom to tell her the news. Unfortunately, without me knowing it, mom sends a message to their former coworkers about the news, and it's just general things to pray for me about. Both have been teachers and basketball coaches at high school that I went to, and the news spread like wildfire with social media. I obviously did not check social media at this crucial time, and I was literally waiting for people to pick up my father's body still in the early morning when a friend of mine started calling me. We were close before, and we were in the same group of friends that occasionally still met after high school, and for the sake of the story, let's call her Ella. Now, I didn't answer because I was waiting for the funeral arrangement calls, and I just didn't want to miss it. She tried calling over and over again, which really annoyed me, and it made me wonder how she knew about any of this. So I decided to block her number for a while. It was a long day of crying and making arrangements and then crying some more. When I finally got home that evening, I saw some messages pour in. Finally, I saw that our high school batch's group chat was activated, and I saw the chats and I was completely livid. It started with someone insinuating that my dad died, and the answers that followed were like, "Oh my god, I also heard that. Is that true?" Then Ella started chatting like she was my keeper. She said to them, "I'll confirm the news. I'll call them later on. Just wait for me." And people were like, "Well, what did they say?" And after a while, the old friend said, "She's not answering, so it's probably true." Now at that point, I stopped reading. I realized that this friend was calling me not because she was concerned, but because she wanted to break the hot news to our old high school batch. She did text me several hours afterwards to say her condolences, but the trust was already broken. At my lowest point and on my worst day, Ella pestered me with calls just so she can call dibs on the confirmation. So I ended the friendship right then and there. I unfollowed and removed her from my socials, blocked her everywhere, and did not invite her when meeting with our same group of friends for the said reason. So did I overreact in this situation? Because right now I'm not sure if I made the right choice. Okay, in my opinion, I think you made the right choice because this is so unacceptable. Because it literally shows that your friend did not care about your dad passing in the slightest. They really did just want to break the news to everybody else, and that's all they had on their mind. They wanted to be the one to tell everybody what's going on, instead of reaching out and being like, "Hey, I'm so sorry for your loss," or something like that. So no, you're not the jerk, because honestly, I would have done the exact same thing. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My roommate didn't get invited to our friend's bachelor trip, and now I'm worried that I have to carry the burden of telling him exactly what's going on. Here's what happened. So my friend and I met each other when we joined the same fraternity in college, and ever since then we became roommates, and we've all been part of the same friend group. He is a great guy that would do anything for any of us, and I would do anything for him, but there is a kicker. He has always been the socially awkward friend in the group. He has trouble effectively joining in conversations, laughs the loudest at his own jokes, his mom still makes frozen dishes for him that he re-ups on once a month, tries to play the band Korn at parties, and then gets mad when we take away his music privilege, and as much as I hate to say it, he is sort of the fringe and cringe friend in the group, and he's sort of there by association in a way. Recently, one of our friends sent up a group chat for a bachelor's trip to Ireland. A number of us guys are in the chat, except for my roommate and our other close friend that my roommate grew up with, and this friend sort of got him in the friend group. So basically, everyone got invited except for my roommate and his childhood best friend. I asked the groom why he didn't invite them, and he said he didn't want to deal with him for a whole week, and didn't want him to feel too left out, so he decided not to invite his other friend as well, while also stating that they're still invited to the wedding. Now, it sounds awful, but it's not my wedding, and I'm not gonna press it. I asked if he planned to say anything to them, and his response was to say, "Well, not really, but if they want to reach out, they can." So that leaves me with the potential burden of telling my roommate that he's not invited to Ireland, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, this really sucks because this is not an ideal situation, because your friend is essentially making some rift in the friend group that is honestly not okay, and it's putting you between a rock and a hard place. But I think there's an important fact about this that you really need to remember, that being that no, you don't have to tell him anything. You have every right to defer this over to the person who didn't invite him and be like, "Hey, I don't know the details, you can ask this guy instead and he'll tell you why you're not invited." Because in my opinion, if he's going to be the one to exclude someone from the group, then he should be the one to explain why that's happening and not you. A former employee was so bad that she caused my entire company to adopt a new rule where we refuse to hire mean people, all literally based off of the fact that she was one of the worst employees I've ever had to deal with. Here's what happened. So my wife and I own a balloon decor company with 8 employees. We take pride in paying a living wage and creating jobs for people who might not fit in the traditional workforce. And as as such, we've come up with one indefinite rule in hiring where we say to ourselves that we don't want any mean people. And someone we will call Erin was the reason we instituted this rule. For reference, she was rude to the other staff and sometimes the customers, and considered herself better than the rest of the sales team, but she also made frequent and sometimes costly errors. She would shift the blame when she could, or even downplay the errors when she couldn't. She had a steady stream of complaints to the boss, who is me, about her terrible coworkers, and a steady stream of complaints to her coworkers about her terrible boss. She loved snagging the high-value inquiries before anyone else, and then complained that we paid hourly rather than on commission. Our whole sales team, namely 3 people, had unrestricted access to QuickBooks, and it was built like that so that they could create invoices and bill clients. One day, my awesome sales manager told me that Erin had logged into the HR portion of QuickBooks and was quite literally looking at everybody else's paychecks. She wanted to know what the manager made so that she could argue for a raise. And by the way, it was a raise that she didn't deserve because she was barely holding onto her job at that point. Well, I just laughed because pay rates have never been a secret. The whole company's finances are an open book, and I feel that every one of our crew should be able to know our gross, net, material costs, wages, owner wages, debts, as well as anything else they might want to ask. And if she had asked me, I would have told her exactly what the sales manager made and what she needed to get a raise. But somehow she thought she could gain an advantage by being sneaky. The next day, I asked my bookkeeper to print out employees' pay rate, and I taped the printout to the whiteboard for everyone to see. And only Erin knew why it had suddenly appeared, and she was pissed off. A few weeks later, she was gone from the company, and I wrote up a who are we document for the whiteboard that every new employee will definitely see. It promises wage and financial transparency and is only one sentence capitalized: no mean people. Because trust me, I don't need another Erin in my office. Oh man, Erin sounds like an idiot. Seriously, she went out of her way to literally axe her own job. Like, does she really think she would be able to sneak into the QuickBooks and be like, oh yeah, now I know the actual secrets. Now I know what everybody's getting paid. This is go time for me. It's like, dude, you've got to know that your job is like on the line, right? You're not only complaining to the boss, but also to the employees that you're complaining to the boss about, and vice versa. Like, what are you doing? And for me, that's a big red flag the second someone's coming to me so willingly and being like, oh yeah, I've got so many complaints about this place, because you know for a fact they're going to be doing the exact same thing to you. So yeah, this whole situation is incredibly annoying, and honestly, I'm so glad you have that rule, because I would not want to work with mean people either. Am I the jerk for not opening the door to unannounced family members after they came to my house knowing that I didn't want them dropping by? Here's what happened. Okay, so where I'm from, people visit each other without any previous communication. The host then has to stop everything that they're doing and receive them, specifically if they are from the family. Now, I believe it's disrespectful to visit someone without justification or without a previous agreement. I know it's the culture of the country, but for me, it's like the visitor is saying, I know you have nothing better to do, so just drop it all and attend to me, disregarding any work or chore I may be doing. I've made it clear to my family that I'm strict with this, and even if I'm just watching a movie, playing video games, or looking at my cat, if you don't take the consideration of notifying me in advance, it doesn't matter if you're a few blocks away, coming from a different country, or from Mars. If you didn't text or call me in preparation to your arrival, you will be left outside and the doors will be shut. Well, a few days ago, my mother told me a cousin of mine came from a very faraway country and he was going to my house in 2 days. Well, I warned her I wouldn't be able to receive them because I would be working. And for reference, I work from home. Plus, I didn't wish to dedicate any time to them because my cousin didn't give me the dignity of knowing he was coming to the country beforehand. I mean, I didn't even know he had been around for like a week. I told my mother, do not come. I will not open the door. I'm really sorry, but no. Well, long story short, they came to my door anyways, and I saw my mother and my father and cousin in the security camera, and I heard them calling me. So I let them sit there under the sun for half an hour until they gave up and finally left. It is incredibly important for me that my word is respected. If I said don't come to my house, my wishes need to be respected or you will be left outside. I love my family and friends, but they need to respect me. This whole I show up first and I tell you later culture is way beneath me. So seriously, am I the jerk for enforcing this personal rule? Because at this point, I'm not sure if I made the wrong choice. No, you're not the jerk for one sole reason alone. You told your mom ahead of time you don't want this and she completely ignored it. And that, in my opinion, is the entire reason why this is messed up. Because you know what? I'm right there with you. I don't like people dropping in unannounced. I would much rather have them tell me they're coming so I can be prepared for them instead of them showing up out of nowhere and being like, okay, here I am, drop what you're doing and take care of me. Like, no, that's super obnoxious. And in my opinion, I think your mom and the rest of your family were completely out of line. Would I be the jerk if I refused to give up a water fountain that the previous homeowners abandoned 4 years ago? Because right now they're demanding that I hand it over. And at this point, I'm not sure what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, in September of 2000, 2021, we purchased a home that was built in 2019 and we moved in immediately. And the previous owners left a few things at the home, including a water fountain. Within the first month, the previous owner asked if they could collect the water fountain, and we said that was fine, but they never showed up. It's now March or April of 2025, literally 4 years later, and it's been sitting in our front yard ever since then. Over the last 2 years, I've been organizing, prepping, and designing my front garden where it will be incorporated into my design. I'm an avid gardener and I decided to redo the garden, but haven't yet planted anything, and it has taken me a while to actually get started for multiple reasons. The first year we were settling in, and the second year I had to learn about the seasons here in Florida, research native plants and the best planting times, amongst other things that had to go along with that. The most important reasons was because the house was built poorly and we had to repair an entire wall that was in the main section of the garden. So there's no point in me planting anything when we will be doing construction work. But after we finished the exterior part of the wall, winter started. The roof still needs repairs, but I have access to the area now. I planned on power washing, repairing, and planting the water fountain this weekend, but I got COVID and got delayed again. So I dismantled the fountain and relocated it to various places to be worked on. Well, suddenly the previous owner messaged my husband stating that he wants the water fountain back. It's his 45th anniversary soon, and it was his wife's 35th anniversary present, stating that he'll be by this weekend to get it. I told my husband to inform the previous owner that I'm no longer willing to part with it. Well, the previous owner states that it's not mine to part with, and he'll be by to pick it up. But it has been on our property for 4 years, and it's considered abandoned property after 30 days. We literally gave him the chance to pick it up, but they didn't do it. We are not a storage unit. I mean, what claim does he possibly have to come and get it? I understand that it was an anniversary gift, but clearly he didn't care enough to get it in the last 4 years. The house was brand new, but terribly built by the previous owner. Everything that could have been wrong is wrong. The roof is missing edge pieces. Subfloor is uneven, causing the entire floor to be uneven with gaps in all of the wood. The entire house needs new siding because they installed the hardy board incorrectly and it's now falling off. There's 4 different colors and textures of caulk used in the backsplash of the kitchen. Screws were popping out of every single wall in the house, and the studs aren't even 16 inches on the center. And trust me, the list goes on and on. We literally have to rebuild the house from the bottom up. And before you ask, yes, we had an inspector, but no, he didn't catch any of these things. We're also trapped in the house because we bought it during a time when the interest rates were very low. So moving isn't an option. And trust me, we would if we could. So seriously, am I the jerk for not giving up the water fountain literally 4 years after he sold us a terribly built house? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. This honestly is insane. You mean to tell me after 4 years, this guy's suddenly like, hey, by the way, I haven't talked to you in almost half a decade, but now I'm gonna come and get that stupid fountain out of your way. Sorry about that. It's like, no, dude, you're not getting it. This is mine now, you abandoned it, and we are not a storage facility, so good luck with that. And that honestly is the case. I can't imagine ever handing that over to that guy, because the way he's acting is super entitled and you have no reason to hand it over if you don't want to. An entitled Karen causes an accident, literally all because she couldn't wait in line because she was too impatient. So I decided to get my own petty revenge as someone who has dealt with this same thing several times by offering to the guy who got hit by this Karen all of my information so that they could nail this Karen for the idiot driver that she truly is. Here's what happened. Okay, so I have to make a left turn at an intersection where the line to make that turn backs up at least half a mile every workday. It's about a 15-minute wait when it's bad and about 10 minutes in normal traffic. A lot of people skip that line and cut off drivers who wait patiently to turn, and it gets hazardous when those same idiots literally force their way into the turn lane regardless of another vehicle already existing in that space. Early last week, some idiot literally just shouldered my car out of the way. They saw me, they heard my horn, they kept merging, and I thankfully avoided that accident and carried along with my day, although I was incredibly irritated. 3 days later, the same idiot tries the same thing on the truck behind me. A woman in a mid-size sedan decided that she was getting in the left turn lane no matter what. Unfortunately for her, the lane she was merging into was already occupied by a full-size pickup, and she probably could have realized that if she looked where she was going, but she didn't. She hit the truck and of course it damaged her car. Nothing major, it honestly just knocked off her mirror. Now I watched the whole thing because that truck was directly behind me. Her head never turned, she was looking straight ahead as she collided with that truck. Something about her body language and the fact that she pulled out her phone to record the truck after the accident that she literally caused told me that she was a Karen, and I just knew she was going to lie her butt off to avoid any kind of fault. Well, this is where my tiny bit of petty revenge comes into play. I gave the truck driver my cell phone number, told him I saw all of it, and I offered to share my observations with the cops or insurance company. This was not the same car that almost hit me earlier in the week, but it was the same entitled BS attitude. The truck driver's insurance called me the next day, and I told him exactly what I saw. It was enough information to exonerate the truck driver and put the fault on that idiot Karen who definitely hit him. I don't know what happened after the call, and I honestly just don't really care, because I ended up getting my petty revenge against one of those idiot drivers. Man, I know exactly what you're feeling right now because I've had that exact scenario happen to me. You're in a turning lane, you're trying to figure your crap out, and lo and behold, these people come out of nowhere and just cut right in front of you and ignore all traffic laws in front of them. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You're gonna get somebody hurt and you're gonna get in an accident. And then my rates are gonna go up for my car insurance, and it's like, dude, are you kidding me right now? That is so annoying. So good for you for doing the right thing and saying that you will be available to help this guy out, because what that lady did was completely unacceptable and she deserved to get punished. Am I the jerk for having cops at my dad's house, all while I move out and try to get my things? Because recently he's been acting very unhinged, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my dad has never liked my significant other and literally can't give me a reason why. 3 days ago, he kicked me, my 8-month-old daughter, and my husband out after an altercation between my dad and husband. 2 days prior to this, my dad threatened my husband for something I did and assumed my husband did not hear his threats. Then 2 days later, he makes one of his awful remarks at my husband, and literally at that moment, everything just breaks loose. Now, things did not get physical, but they were about to before I stepped in between them. My husband then threatened my dad, and then we got kicked out. Now, 9 months ago, just before I gave birth, my dad begged us to move from another state and live with him. He wanted us to have time to save some money and get our bearings as new parents. But I was reluctant, knowing my dad, and just how abrasive he is, and didn't think it was a good idea. He insisted things would be fine, and we decided to give it a chance, knowing how helpful it would be to not have rent literally looming over us as we welcomed our new daughter into the world. Ever since we arrived, my dad has been nothing but rude to my husband. Without diving deep into the details, this has left my husband feeling extremely uncomfortable and walking on eggshells to keep the peace. At 6 months postpartum, my husband agreed to quit working and instead let me go back to work, which I really wanted. He was going to stay at home with the baby, and after a few months, he would move closer to his parents, who are retired and would help us with childcare. That way, we can both work and it can kind of work out. About a month ago, we let my dad know we'd be moving out and relocating 2 hours north where my in-laws live. And this caused a really big argument between my dad and myself, where he called me names and told me it was my fault he would have to sell his house. And keep in mind, we haven't been paying rent, despite every attempt every month we've been there to give him money. Ever since then, tensions have been growing. My dad has always made quite a bit of noise when my daughter has been sleeping, and she is not a great sleeper as it is. And we're up every 2 hours with her all night since birth. Needless to say, my husband and I are exhausted, and we are over him waking her up. 5 days ago at 6 o'clock in the morning, he is in the kitchen slamming cabinets shut and woke the baby up. I start work at 6 in the morning, and usually my husband will take care of all the baby's needs while I'm working, even though I'm home. The baby is quite particular at this age and wants me to do the soothing, so I had my husband move my mouse in the office while I put her to sleep. But the noise continued, and I hit my breaking point and slammed the door. Well, this set my dad off, and he was screaming threats towards my husband, assuming that he slammed the door. When my husband heard these threats, he wanted to leave immediately. After fighting with him all day to bide our time and stick to the plan for moving, he agreed he wouldn't say or do anything towards my dad, and we were just gonna leave in peace. Well, that is until 2 days later, when my dad made an awful comment at my husband, and my husband just unglued. My dad expected me to leave my husband then and there for disrespecting him in his house. Because I told him that was out of the question and stated that he made threats first, he made me and my daughter leave as well. He gave me 45 minutes to collect my things and leave. And you know what? We just left. Today, I let him know that we would be by Saturday to get the rest of our things, and also asked if we could leave for a couple of hours so that conflicts didn't continue. He told me he wouldn't let me get my stuff with my husband's help, as apparently he was not welcome back in the house. Then he told me that because I won't leave him, it was my fault that we would no longer have a relationship, and he wouldn't have a relationship with my daughter. I told him that I would be there on Saturday with a police officer, and I will collect whatever I can in the 15 to 30 minutes that I have. Keep in mind, my husband is a very kind and gentle man. He has never been awful towards me, never made me question his loyalty, and until a few days ago, has never been disrespectful towards my family. I mean, seriously, I've never even seen him be physical or aggressive towards anyone until then. I'm very hurt with my husband for going against what he promised me and haven't shared much words with him in a few days. However, I understand there's only so much one can take before they lose it. Regardless, his actions did lead to this. That being said, I'm having a hard time forgiving my dad for literally kicking me out like that, especially with an 8-month-old baby, and for him making threats to begin with, and ultimately for the cruel things he's saying and doing to me. So am I the jerk for wanting to have a cop there when I get my stuff? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all, and honestly, I think you're making the right choice. Your dad is being completely unhinged and it's not fair. Like seriously, he's being really rude and he's treating you and your husband like garbage. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would do the same thing because the way he's acting is super toxic. My narcissistic boss constantly puts me down by saying that she's smarter than me while also placing herself on a pedestal that truly was incredibly fragile. So I decided to get some revenge by not only tricking her into not doing her job, but doing it in such a way where she couldn't argue that I wasn't doing exactly as she told me. Here's what happened. Okay, so about 20 years ago, I used to work as an office assistant at a small company where we would receive orders from clients, and then we would assign the work to one of our freelancers who were well compensated and respectable professionals. My boss was such a professional herself, and when possible, we would assign that work to her as well. I accepted the minimum wage job because she told me that I could sometimes get tasks assigned as a freelancer with a nice freelancer compensation, and that she would personally train me, stating that in less than a year, I would most likely be promoted to a regular freelancer and make very good money. So this sounded like a great career path in my young and naive ears. One of the things she had told me in the very beginning was that when you take over an order, you become like a project manager for that order. You need to make sure that the freelancer would finish the work on time, as the work was usually time sensitive. Additionally, she loved going on long lectures about how she is paying me for me to use my brain and figure things out when necessary. These lectures were mainly a vehicle for her to stroke her own ego by explaining to her employees how our brains were not as smart as hers. One day, our biggest corporate client had placed a large order that was due on a Monday by noon, and we had assigned the task to my boss to do over the weekend. It was Monday morning and the time was ticking, and my boss had not arrived at the office yet, and the client had called to see if we were going to provide the work soon as it was urgent. I tried calling my boss, who didn't pick up her mobile, and I called half an hour later and I even texted her, but still I got no answer or reply while noon was also fastly approaching. So I called her landline at home. Her husband picked up, told me she wasn't at home, and I explained very briefly why I was trying to get a hold of her. Well, less than an hour before noon, my boss called furious that I had been so insistent on getting a hold of her and that I had created a stage of stress and emergency at her house. She said her home number was for emergencies only, and this apparently wasn't an emergency. She said to me, "It's not professional to call people when they are not at work." She then told me she got everything under control and she was now sending the work to the client directly. Well, when she arrived at the office, she gave me a big scolding in person and told me that I do need to hound other freelancers, but not her. It was her business and she got everything handled. She knew all of the clients and they were clients because of her. She then looked me in the eye and told me, "If I take over a task, it's not your task anymore, it's mine. You do not need to bother me with reminders. You just give me the instructions from the client and I'll handle everything myself. From that point on, your job is done. I never ever miss my deadlines. If the client calls, you tell them I'm on it and you don't call me or text me about it." And you know what? Fair enough. But it was here that I decided to get my revenge. I then apologized for the stress and repeated the new instructions back to her for confirmation, and she was very happy with that and confirmed that I understood everything. She once more gave me her favorite lecture about how she is paying me to use my brain, with a lot of condescending examples of how she is always using her brain unlike us normal workers. And all I could do was nod along, as if her narcissistic rant was actually teaching anybody anything. Well, about a month or so later, another client came in with another order. So I accepted it and my boss was available to handle it, so I forwarded everything to her and I considered my work in regard to that order done as instructed. On the day of the deadline, I was on vacation and was hiking in a remote area with spotty cell coverage. Well, the other office assistant called me and told me that the client had called the office to check if the work was ready. I then just told my colleague that our boss was on it and that we didn't need to worry as our boss was going to handle it, and that my clear instructions were to tell the client that our boss was personally on it. The task would be done by the deadline, and that I was explicitly told not to call our boss to remind her of the deadline. Then, since I was on vacation, I needed to conserve my battery and everything at the office was handled, so I switched off my phone. An approaching deadline that my boss had to meet was explicitly not an emergency. Also, I had recently realized that my boss had knowingly misled me about the career opportunities that this job was affording me, so I wasn't going to be on call on my rare days off. While I was hiking without a care in the world, my boss had managed to forget about the deadline. By the time she realized she had missed it, the office was closed. My boss had urgently finished the work, but it turned out she didn't know the client so well as she didn't have their contact details. As the order was in the office and my phone was off, she had to go there herself, fetch it, and use the contact details to deliver the work late. This was particularly embarrassing as my colleague had informed the client our boss was personally doing the work for them. Well, when I came back to work, it was absolute pandemonium. She screamed at me, but I simply pointed out that everything I had done was following her instructions. She would say stuff like, "Why did you do this?" But I told her, "Well, you told me to." And any other counter argument she brought up, I would literally just re-explain what she told me. Well, she was fuming, but she knew I was correct, and I had acted exactly as instructed. She also screamed at me for my phone being off, but I said I needed to conserve my battery for emergencies, and this was clearly not an emergency, and I'm not on call while on vacation anyways. Now, you might be thinking that this is a win for me, right? Well, narcissists never accept blame, and she had an idea of how to shift the blame to me after all. She said to me, "But you didn't provide me with the client's contact details with the order assignment. How could I have delivered them the work? It was your fault for not providing me with all the information." I then pointed out that she told me she knew all the clients personally, but if she had just used her brain like she is constantly telling us to, she could have easily noticed that the order instructions were on the client's letterhead with all their contact details spelled out, and it's literally on every single page, mind you, on the top and bottom of it. Now that was a huge slap to her fragile ego, and remembering her face in that moment still makes me smile. Needless to say, I was fired, but of course I didn't mind, because that job sucked and I truly didn't want to work there in the first place. Wow, that lady is an idiot. She seriously still found some kind of way of blaming this on you, even though you literally did nothing wrong. Because let's think about it for a second. You followed her instructions exactly. You repeated it back to her, and still it wasn't good enough. And the original poster is right. Narcissists like this will never accept any responsibility, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. So sure, you got fired from that job, but honestly, I think you could do way better than that, because this lady sounds like an absolute piece of work. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to drive if my wife is in the car? Because she is one of the most obnoxious people on planet Earth to deal with when I'm driving. Here's what happened. Okay, so for years after we got married, I could never figure out why I would be so angry and moody anytime my wife and I went somewhere. But then it finally clicked. I was only in a bad mood if I drove with my wife. My wife is the absolute worst backseat driver I've ever seen. It doesn't matter how I drive. She still finds things to complain about. She'll say stuff like, "Why did you go this way? If you'd gone that way, we would be there by now." She'll complain about me driving too fast or driving too slow. She'll say that I could have made a light or that the light was red and I blew right through it. She'll say that I slammed my brakes way too hard, that there are 17 great parking spots, and I had to choose spot number 18, which is apparently the worst. She'll say that I turned my blinker on too late, or that I turned my blinker on too early, while also complaining about me accelerating so slowly, while then complaining that I'm accelerating way too quickly. And this is literally just scratching the surface. So for the past couple of years, I have refused to drive. I now make her do all the driving, and lo and behold, I'm no longer a grumpy person when we travel. She has now gotten upset that she now is always driving and told me that I need to at least split it 50-50 with her. I told her that if she could just keep her opinions to herself while I was driving, then I absolutely would, and she agreed. So last weekend I started driving, and she couldn't even last 3 minutes without criticizing my driving. I then pulled over and I told her I'm done. Either she takes over driving or we're going home. Eventually, she took the wheel, which is right as she muttered that I drive like a moron, even though there's only one of us who has any tickets and has at-fault accidents on their record, and that person is not me. So seriously, am I the jerk for refusing to drive if she's present? Because right now I don't know what to do. I don't blame you for a second, and no, you are not the jerk. Your wife needs to chill out. Seriously, if you're gonna split it 50-50, then she needs to do what you're doing. You're not sitting there criticizing everything she's doing. You're not micromanaging her expectations. So why on earth is she doing that to you? It sounds incredibly frustrating and very annoying to deal with. And honestly, I don't blame you for getting upset in the slightest. Am I the jerk for refusing to give up my bedroom for my niece and nephew? All because my parents demand it since my sister is now living with us after her divorce. But after I said no, everybody's now treating me really differently and the entire house is very tense. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 19-year-old female and I still live at home with my parents while I attend college. I pay for my own tuition and contribute to the household expenses when I can, but since my school is local, living at home saves me a ton of money. Recently, my older 27-year-old sister and her 2 kids, ages 5 and 3, moved back in after her divorce. She is struggling financially, and my parents are letting her stay here rent-free until she gets back on her feet. And I get that it's a tough situation, so I've been helping out with the kids when I can. Well, the issue is that my parents want me to give up my bedroom so that my sister's kids can have their own space. We have a small house and my sister's already taking the guest bedroom, so the kids are currently sleeping with her. But my parents think that it would be better for them to get their own room and are now asking me to move to the couch or make do by squeezing into their office space. But you know what? I said no. I've lived here my whole life and this is still my home and I need my own space, especially since I have a heavy college workload. I don't see why I should have to be the one to sacrifice my room when this situation isn't my fault. Well, my sister's upset, saying that her kids are uncomfortable, and my parents are disappointed in me for not being more understanding. And now the whole house is tense and I'm wondering if I'm being selfish. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now I'm incredibly annoyed. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. It is completely unreasonable for them to expect you to literally uproot your entire life just so the 3-year-old and the 5-year-old can have a place to stay in, which by the way, they can easily stay in that room with your older sister. This is not a permanent situation for her, as I'm willing to imagine that they're probably looking for an apartment of some kind. Like they can't possibly be thinking they're gonna live here forever, right? So no, if I was in your shoes, I would do the exact same thing because what they're asking of you, in my opinion, is completely unreasonable. Am I the jerk for telling a coworker to stop brown-nosing and sucking up by going to a funeral for a man that he literally didn't know just so he can look good in front of the higher-ups? Here's what happened. Okay, so last week, a long-retired former coworker passed away, and this is someone who was very popular and well-known in our company. I've worked with him in a close team setup for several years and was really sad when I learned that he passed away. Next week is his funeral, and me and some of my other coworkers who worked with him wanted to attend the funeral. But this is where the biggest issue comes into play. We have one coworker who has severe fear of missing out and is kind of a brown-noser to the higher-ups. He only knows about the deceased man from the stories that we tell about him. And he met him only once at a company function where they talked for like 5 minutes in a group setting. This guy is now running around the company and tells everybody how tragic the death is and how affected he is by this. Also, when I told my boss that I needed PTO to attend the funeral, I was told that it would not be possible as at least one team member has to be present in the company, and said coworker had already asked for PTO so that he could attend the funeral. When I asked him if we could switch, he told me no, we would not be able to because he wants to join the funeral as it would be a good thing to join and management will sure appreciate it. Well, that's where I lost it, and I told him to stop brown-nosing and making the death of a coworker that he didn't know all about him. Since then, he complained to our boss that I was rude to him, but most of our coworkers are on my side. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because honestly, I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. This really is super stupid. This guy doesn't even know the guy that passed away. He's only doing it because he wants to look good, and that literally is not a good enough reason to take off work. Like, you actually knew the guy, and now you're getting denied PTO all because this guy wants to go. So no, you're not the jerk for calling him out, because I know if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. My girlfriend has monthly mental breakdowns and panic attack episodes that quite literally reverts her back to being a 3-year-old, where she is screaming and crying in a way that is truly not okay. And now I'm wondering if this is actually someone I would have spent the rest of my life with, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my girlfriend and I have been dating for 2.5 years now. We matched online and I totally fell for her. This has been my longest relationship ever, and just 3 weeks after we started dating, we took a road trip to go camping, and that's when I genuinely started falling in love with her. Only a few weeks after that, we started exchanging I love yous. She's been able to put up with my annoying quirks and I with hers. We enjoy so much of the same things, but also enjoy our own things as well. We love traveling and we've been all over together, and it's honestly the most fun exploring and experiencing new things with her. She's always open to try new things and experience new food and all this other stuff, and it's nearly everything I've dreamed of in a relationship, besides maybe 30% of it. The other part that is totally weighing me down as I approach whether I want to spend the rest of my life with her or not is that sometimes once a month, sometimes more, she has a total and complete meltdown, just totally non-functional. I've never seen another adult human cry like this, and we're not talking like ugly crying, but a 3-year-old temper tantrum level crying. And the first time it happened, I nearly broke up with her, but I have way too much patience and I just let it keep going. I weighed all the positives, and dealing with the one breakdown a month seemed worth it. Now, for some context, my mother growing up would also have monthly breakdowns. Although hers were slightly different, she would just get really angry. Plates were thrown across the room, smashed into the floor, there was yelling, and she would say she's gonna leave, and I just have many vivid memories of my dad begging my mom to stay, where he would apologize and grovel for her to stay. And these images are burned into my brain to this day, which is ultimately what led to their divorce. My dad couldn't take it anymore and started cheating and kicked my mom out. Well, every time these happen with my girlfriend, it just triggers all those feelings I have as a child, of being frightened, fearing my mom would leave me, etc. But I bite my tongue, I hold her, I comfort her, and I try to calm her down. And these go on for 3 to 12 hours hours at a time. I can't leave her alone because then she tries hurting herself, and if I try to do anything other than comfort her, it pushes her further into her spiral. She claims she's self-aware during these episodes, but she acts like she's reverted to a 3-year-old child. She is aware that this is a problem, and she gets angry with herself for letting it happen, even though I reassure her that I understand. I've tried to do research and help her figure it out, but she gets extremely angry when I put on my doctor hat, so I've supported her in trying to figure it out. She's been seeing a therapist weekly, sees a psychiatrist, has been seen by doctors, where she also did 6 months of therapeutic ketamine, and so on and so forth. But nothing has improved, and it's only gotten worse, with one of the recent episodes forcing me to nearly call 911 as she was driving at the time, where she then pulled over her car and started to run away with no coat in the middle of winter. And yeah, it's once a month like clockwork. My mother recently made the realization as she started to go through menopause, and her doctor diagnosed her with PCOS and severe PMDD, and that explains her major freakouts once a month, because now she's extremely calm. Even just 10 years ago, she would call me telling me about her plan to end it all, and now she's just totally normal, and she's expressed that it's probably the same for her. So all I'm thinking about is this: will this be my life if I choose to marry her? Can I put up with monthly breakdowns? I'm totally stuck because I do love her, but I really don't know what to do at this point. What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, if you did want to leave her, you are well within your rights. I totally understand that you love her and you do want to be there for her, but if this is too much for you, then you have every right to step away. That doesn't make you a bad person, it just means that you literally are not a good fit for her. And sure, she's having breakdowns where she's becoming a 3-year-old child, and yeah, it definitely sounds like she needs a doctor or some kind of medical intervention. And I think you're going about this in the right way, where you're like, okay, do I really want to put up with this for the rest of my life? Because I can confidently say, in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, no, I would not be able to do this. I would not be cut out to deal with this kind of outburst every single month like clockwork, and I definitely would not be able to dedicate 12 hours of my day just to make sure she doesn't hurt herself. At that point, it's time to get in a hospital of some kind, because that is not normal. And I don't say that to be insensitive, but seriously, let's think about this for a second. She's clearly going through some mental health crisis, and I guarantee you there's way better things that you can do to help her out than just holding her for 12 hours and being like, yeah, I'm gonna be there for you, which in and of itself is not a bad thing to do. But I really think there's better options here that someone who's actually qualified for this can help her out with. So no, you would not be the bad guy if you did walk away from this relationship, because I know if I was in your shoes, I don't think I would ever be able to put up with this. My super religious parents don't know that I'm gonna be moving out and living with my boyfriend, and because of their religious choice, I honestly am so worried they're gonna judge me harshly and possibly reject me entirely, making me feel incredibly worried and very concerned. Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I have been dating since June of 2024 and made our relationship official in August. So far, we have a very loving and healthy relationship with great communication. We both see this as a long-term commitment and are marriage-minded, so we actively work on a relationship and don't let small issues break us apart. Although my boyfriend has his own place, he has essentially been living with me since November while still paying his own bills from afar. My name is the only one on my lease, and I don't receive any financial support from my parents. I have a stable job and so does he. And since we both work from home, we spend almost all of our time together. Recently, we applied for a new apartment together and got approved. We're set to move in at the end of April, and this is an exciting step for us, but I'm struggling with how to tell my parents. My parents are very religious and have strict beliefs about relationships. We can't spend quality time together before marriage, if you know what I mean. We can't have any sleepovers. There's no living together before marriage, and ideally, I should be with someone who shares those same values. Now, I don't agree with all of their views, especially regarding living together before marriage. I believe it's a smart decision because it allows me to see how my partner operates daily and ensures that we are truly compatible before making a lifelong commitment. Up until now, I have never told my parents when I spent the night with a boyfriend, let alone that my current boyfriend has been staying with me for months. I know that revealing our new living situation will disappoint them, and it may cause strain in our relationship. However, I've spent my entire life trying to please them, hiding parts of me that don't align with their beliefs, and it has made me very miserable. And you know what? I don't want to keep living like that. I want to be honest about my choices and have them accept me even if they don't agree. So for those who have been in similar situations or have any advice on me finally putting my foot down on my independence, how should I handle this in a respectful but firm way? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, first and foremost, I think you need to take a step back and realize that you are an adult now. For reference, the original poster here is 23 and their boyfriend is 24. So seriously, if you wanted to live with your boyfriend, you absolutely have every right to, regardless of what your parents think. That really is something you can do, and it really will be okay. In terms of how to talk about it, honestly, that's between you and your parents, you know them way better than anybody possibly could, so you know how they're gonna react, and from the sounds of it, they're probably gonna be disappointed pretty much no matter what. It doesn't really sound like you're gonna win them over anytime soon, and there may be a chance that they just don't accept what you're doing and they're like, wow, this is wrong. Even though I think that you have every right to move in with your boyfriend if you want to. So I think if I was in your shoes, I would be as open and honest as possible while still trying to like carve some kind of like connection with them still, because from the sounds of it, they seem really strict, but it doesn't sound like they're the type of people who would like cut you off all of a sudden, all because you're doing something they don't completely agree with. So yeah, hopefully this all works out in some kind of way, because this really does sound like a tricky situation. And it totally makes sense as to why you would be hesitant about having this conversation with your parents in this way. My idiotic entitled boss demands that I train my replacement, which just so happens to be his nephew, as he plans on firing me in 6 months. So I decide to get some revenge by literally not training this guy at all, resulting in this nephew nearly burning down the hotel that I helped manage. Here's what happened. Okay, so my first job out of high school was doing the landscaping for a posh hotel near my hometown. I loved the job and the work was often demanding but rewarding nonetheless. After working there for a few years, the hotel was sold to a businessman as the owner wanted to retire to Florida. The new owner had a gambling addiction and a drinking problem. He constantly drained funds from his businesses to support his vices, which really showed in how quickly the hotel went from posh to the literal definition of a roach motel. I continued doing my job faithfully despite the rapid downturn in overall appearance. My paychecks were still nice, and I didn't feel as many effects of the downtown as other departments. About 6 months into the new ownership, the owner introduces me to his nephew and says that he wants me to train him to do my job so that I don't have to spend all day doing the landscaping for the property. Well, the nephew at the time seemed more concerned with playing Pokemon on his Game Boy than working, and even when I set him to a simple task, like raking leaves or watering flowers, I would often find him playing his Game Boy somewhere, or sitting in the lounge drinking with his uncle. I constantly complained about him to the owner, and I told him that I had enough seniority in my position to search for and train a more suitable person to do the job. That's when the owner dropped the bombshell. His nephew was going to replace me in 6 months. He was only paying his nephew minimum wage, whereas I was getting nearly 3 times as much because of my seniority and how much the original owner loved me. At this point, I realized that I was too expensive for him and he wanted to have more money available for his habits. I then immediately started looking for a new job. I continued working at the hotel, but I didn't put much effort into it. I showed the lazy nephew some basic stuff, but I pretty much left him to his own devices for the rest of the day. By the time I was asked to leave, the amount of neglect was overwhelmingly apparent. Poison ivy was growing around the entrances, and the normally well-manicured lawns looked like overgrown meadows. 6 months after I left, there was a massive fire in the middle garden because the nephew somehow thought the most effective way to get rid of the poison ivy and the weeds in the mulch was to douse it in gasoline and light it aflame. He was stood nearby with a garden hose to put it out, but was swiftly overwhelmed as dry leaves and other material quickly spread the flames into the hotel itself. The fire department was called, the hotel was evacuated, and the nephew was arrested for arson despite trying to convince everyone that he fully intended to put the fire out with a garden hose after he got the desired effect. The owner was forced to sell the hotel and restaurant on the property to a franchise. He was eventually audited by the IRS and arrested for tax fraud. Today, the property is bustling again. The restaurant was bought by a Mexican restaurant franchise and does decent business. The 2 side blocks of rooms that were damaged in the fire were torn down and turned into an outdoor banquet area for the Mexican restaurant. The main hotel has bounced back after this idiot owner was replaced, and the entire property barely resembles what it looked like when I worked there. But with all things considered, this guy deserves it because he was a nightmare to work for. I love the story so much because, like, seriously, anytime someone's gonna be like, yeah, you need to train your replacement, that's the second I'm gonna look for another job and not do anything else until then. Seriously, that was a stupid move by the owner because he literally gave this guy a license to say, okay, I'm gonna find another job and show you the bare minimum. And from the sounds of it, the nephew's a complete moron. This guy used gasoline and fire to get rid of the weeds. And I'm sure there's someone out there who can probably do that safely, but this guy did not know what he was doing. This nephew's a complete idiot. The fact that the fire didn't spread further is like a miracle in and of itself. So truly, good for you for getting revenge in a roundabout way, because this guy's an idiot for saying he's gonna replace you. And the fact that he went to jail for tax fraud is hilarious in my opinion, because it shows exactly the kind of person that you were working for. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled jerk parked next to me kept hitting their car door into my car, so I decided to return the favor by waiting until they left and doing the exact same thing on the other side of their car. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was parked in a student parking structure and I was stuck on a phone call before heading out. There was an SUV that pulled in next to me, and for a few minutes, one of the girls had her door open while she was looking through the back seat. Well, the door kept banging into my car, and I look over and I see that she wasn't paying attention. When all was said and done, her other friend came out of the other side of the car, and they both ended up leaving. Now, I noticed the friend pointing out that her door was hitting my car, and that's when she looked and saw me sitting in the car. I shook my head at her after seeing that she was chuckling at the situation, but I didn't say anything because I was still on the phone. Now, they were long gone by the time I finished my call, so I pulled my car to park on the other side of her car, and then I proceeded to slam my door into hers repeatedly, all the way until some dents started caving in. Now, my car is super old, so it's no biggie, but just because it's old doesn't mean people should be careless jerks about it. Anyways, it went fine, and I felt a lot better about the situation overall. Oh man, I think the fact that she laughed at you after knowing that you were in the car, like that would have set me off, and I can't say I wouldn't do the exact same thing that you did. So good for you for getting this revenge, because honestly, it sounded like these people absolutely deserved it. My entitled sister didn't buy winter clothing for her kids, forcing me and my family to step up so that they wouldn't freeze. Here's what happened. Okay, just to preface, my ex-brother-in-law did take the kids away from my sister. She is a narcissist, a master manipulator, and probably would have had no problem lying in court to get her way, were it not for the potential evidence against her being so overwhelmingly bad. Her ex took the kids and didn't bring them back once he was positive that she couldn't do anything about it, and soon the court gave him majority custody. My sister only gets to see her kids about 2 days a month and on some holidays. Now, this particular incident goes back to the winter of 2023, before my sister was evicted from the family property. At that time, her boyfriend had recently died in a car accident that quite possibly wasn't an accident. Technically, she had just broken up with a guy because he had cheated on her, and repeatedly cried to me that she's not a cheater herself, which is an outright lie, as she had 3 affairs that we know of while still married to her ex-husband. And how she still thinks this, I honestly just don't know. But by that time, she was barely home 2 nights a week. My parents and I were the only ones taking care of and paying to feed her kids because she wasn't coming home to feed them. She would call her kids and ask them what they wanted for dinner, and then wouldn't even show up. Our mother then got mad at her and over text message told her that she was abandoning her children. And my sister's verbatim answer back was to say, "Oh my gosh, no I didn't." She never grew out of her teenage mentality. Even after having 3 kids and her husband joining the military to better support them, she was still acting like a teenager. My mother and I got in touch with my ex-brother-in-law to tell him everything, because my sister had her kids so brainwashed that they didn't tell him much until he made them tell him everything. And any good clothing my nephews had, they would only keep at their father's house because they didn't want them torn up by the dogs or smelling like dog feces. I then found out my nephews had no winter clothing at my sister's trailer because my nephew woke me up on an early November in the morning to ask for a ride to school because he had missed the bus. And he was at my door in 39 degrees shivering in nothing but a t-shirt and shorts, and his shoes were falling apart. I asked him where his coat was, and he said that he didn't have one anymore. While I was driving him to school, I told him I was going to buy him a coat. And he literally said to me, "Well, I'm not that cold." But I said to him, "Dude, I'm looking at you shivering right now." I mean, his shoes were so bad, he could barely walk in them. He had to do this limp forward moonwalk shuffle because the bottoms of his shoes were coming apart. I superglued them back together that night, and the next day I went out and I bought him a coat at a thrift store, and he was wearing it to school right away. Then on the weekend, I took him out clothing shopping and practically bought him a whole new wardrobe. He didn't even have decent socks. He was having to use his socks from his brothers and even his mother. I bought him socks, then I took him to a certain thrift store with great prices, and I bought him a pair of good black sneakers, 2 or 3 long sleeve shirts, 2 sweatshirts, 3 pairs of pants, because he had nothing but summer shorts, while also buying him a pair of gloves and a knit cap. We rushed everything into the washing machine, and he was wearing that stuff to school that Monday. The following weekend, I took my middle nephew out and bought him some new socks too, as well as about the same amount of thrift store clothing. He even still wears the green hoodie I got for him back then. I bought him several pairs of pants, several shirts and sweatshirts, and a big thick coat, which he really liked. And he was wearing that stuff as soon as possible. The only thing he didn't need was shoes. I'm on a fixed income, and this was not very long before Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I spent about $200 on clothing for those kids because they needed it. My eldest nephew was already living with his dad full-time, so he was fine. I also lent my youngest nephew a timber range camping cot just so he would have a decent bed. His tiny room in the trailer had a couch bed previously, but moisture and dogs just destroyed it. I also bought the kid a sleeping bag because he wasn't sleeping well due to the cot being cold on the underside. I ended up getting blankets and pillows for both of those kids, and after my sister was evicted, we cleaned out the trailer and found out that she had not only had a brand new sleeping bag in storage, but she also had a hoard of unused blankets hidden under her bed. And my god, we were so mad at her. She let the kids be cold cold when she had that stuff the whole time. The summer of 2023, all 3 of my nephews were allowed to live around the yard in tents, which they found preferable to living in the trailer with their mom, her boyfriend, and the stinky dogs. I ran power cords from my house to all 3 of their tents, and I got all 3 of those kids fans and ice coolers, and lent 2 of them camping cots to sleep on. I also let the eldest stay in my camper trailer from time to time. When telling people this stuff, the first words out of their mouths are usually to say, well, you're a good uncle. Meanwhile, my sister was busy drinking, partying, and doing all kinds of substances, and fighting with her piece of garbage boyfriend, and making trouble for all of us. We worked in secret with my ex-brother-in-law to make sure those kids were safe, and he ended up taking them that December. Then he took my sister back to court, and before anyone points it out, my parents and I were very remorseful for not taking action sooner, but my sister had us all mentally beat down. She's a chronic manipulator that makes up stuff and then spreads lies. She had people all over the area believing the stuff she said about our parents. My parents couldn't go to the local restaurant without getting side glances from people. But after we kicked out my sister, all of that stopped. She was poisoning everyone against our parents. So it's crazy how she wonders why we had enough of her and literally want nothing to do with her in the slightest. Wow, she really was a terrible mom, and I'm so glad those kids are away from her. Seriously, who in their right mind would be like, yeah, let me let my kids go cold this winter? That's a good idea. By the way, all these blankets are mine. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You are an awful parent. Like, you don't deserve to have kids. So good for you and your family for stepping up, because this sounds like a nightmare. And hopefully you don't have to deal with her in that capacity ever again. An entitled pastor that I used to work for made fun of a disabled girl who was checking us out for our groceries, causing me to lose all respect for them in a way that I truly never expected. Here's what happened. Back in the 90s, I took a summer job at a church that my grandparents attended, and my family would occasionally attend as well. I was 16 years old at the time, and I did consider becoming a pastor after high school. The church I worked at was run by a husband and wife pastor team. Both seemed nice and welcoming and would answer a lot of my questions regarding college divinity programs, degrees, internships, etc. This couple had replaced the founding pastors who had passed away 5 or 6 years before. The founding pastor had a house built next to the church for pastor housing, and yes, this will come into play later on. Like many other churches, they hosted a once-a-week vacation Bible school. After the second day of Bible school, the female pastor saw that some of the snacks and beverage supplies were running low, so she asked me to go with her to the grocery store to resupply. Now, the grocery store we went to was known to hire adults with intellectual disabilities as baggers, so the female pastor and I got what was needed and got in line. It was a busy day, and there were 2 customers ahead of us in line. The bagger, who had an intellectual disability, was chatting with customers and the cashier. She had a speech impediment, and the female pastor laughed at how she was talking and turned to me and said, "Those people shouldn't be working here and are just a nuisance." Well, at that moment, I lost all respect for the female pastor. I didn't say anything, and yes, I really regret it. The rest of the vacation Bible school went well, and I worked 2 more weeks, and then summer break was done. By the next summer, I took a job at a local hardware and lumber store. The owner, who's a guy with a daughter with Down syndrome, would give discounts to churches, homeless shelters, and other nonprofits. Well, the husband and wife pastor had contacted the store regarding lumber and other materials to rebuild a bathroom in the pastor's house. The store owner knew that I had previously worked at that church, as I had listed them as a reference. The store owner mentions that the couple would be coming in later to look at pricing for materials, and the store owner's daughter would sometimes help out at the store or just hang out. So I make the decision. I tell the store owner about the female pastor's awful comments about the grocery store employee from a year before, and trust me, he wasn't happy. He said he would still do business with them, but he would not be giving them a discount. And you know what? I always took pleasure in knowing that the female pastor's awful attitude prevented her from getting a discount. Wow, you would imagine someone who calls themselves a pastor, like, you know, a religious leader for a faith, would have some semblance of like love and compassion for everybody regardless of if they're different or not. Like, seriously, why would they say something like that and be like, oh, they're such a nuisance? It's like, no, hypocrites like you are a nuisance. So good for you for speaking up and saying something about this, because those people suck, and they absolutely do not deserve to ever get a discount. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to stop picking on my kids or he's not coming on vacation? Because right now I'm worried that I may have caused some weird drama in the family, and at this point, I am seriously not sure what to do. Here's what happened. To start things off, I have 3 kids. I have a 16-year-old son that we will call Rob, a 14-year-old daughter who we will call Lisa, and a 9-year-old daughter who we will call Anne. Lisa is autistic, and her special interest is Taylor Swift, and Rob and Anne just go along with it and indulge her. They're good kids who care and support each other, and yes, Rob and Anne also get attention and support for their interests too. Now, my brother-in-law, who we will call Hector, literally has a personality where he's always trying to rile people up. You know, the whole thing where they're like, oh, it's just a joke, bro. Like, super childish, but whatever, he's family, right? Except my husband is out of the country country, so I guess he thinks that he gets to do whatever he wants. A few weeks ago, he started needling at Lisa by making fun of Taylor Swift, using lots of childish name-calling words, intentionally using the wrong word for fans and stuff, and just really immature kid stuff. Lisa knows that not everyone likes Taylor Swift, and some people even hate her. In fact, one of her best friends hates her. She's not unable to hear different opinions. She has her own, and I'm sure she would love to share them with you if you had 4 hours to spare. He would say, well, Swifters do all these awful things. And she would respond by saying, Uncle Hector, it's Swifties. And he would just say it again to needle her some more. Now, I was not in the room when this happened, but Rob was. Rob said to him, why do you keep using the wrong word? She told you the right word. Hector then said he can say whatever he wants and that they should just cry about it. Rob then said to him, it seems like you're going out of your way just to upset Lisa. Rob eventually asked her to finish what she was talking about and just to ignore Hector. And this is when I came into the room and Hector waved to the kids and said, Roberta's getting real mad that someone's joking about mother. Now, I wasn't in the room, so I didn't hear the comment about me, and Rob said that I wouldn't get it. Before I could say anything, Rob said, bro, did you really just call me a girl's name? What are you, like 12 years old? I then put my hands up and I said, okay, enough. Hector, just stop. He said I'm raising soft kids who can't take a joke, but then I said that he's being so rude and that he wouldn't be acting like this if my husband was home. I said if he wants to still go with us to Colorado in the summer, you know, like we're planning to do, then he has to stop now or he's not coming. Well, this is what set him off, and he said I had no right to do that, even though yes, I absolutely do, and that I'm being a controlling yak over Taylor Swift. I said, no, I don't care about Taylor Swift. This is about you being mean to your niece because her dad isn't home. He said, well, F you and good luck next time you have a problem. You're on your own. He then took his Costco chicken and left, and I swear he must have immediately gone running to my mother-in-law because she called me to ask for what really happened and just sighed a lot. I asked her if I was overreacting, and she said she hopes that we can work it out because that trip was all that he had to look forward to since he was laid off from work. I hate causing drama in the family, so am I the jerk and out of line for what I said? Because seriously, I don't know what to do. Okay, you need to take a step back and realize that you did not cause this drama. Hector is literally the reason any of this went wrong, and no one can convince me otherwise. Like seriously, this is so annoying. He starts all this drama and treats everybody like crap. He acts super childish and is just really obnoxious all the time, and then has the audacity to be like, oh my god, wait a second. There are consequences for my actions? What do you mean? If this was me, there's no way he would ever go to Colorado with my family, and I would tell him, listen, you're gonna have to like stay home. This is not gonna work out. Because Rob has it 100% correct. He was only acting that way to try and get a rise out of Lisa, and the fact that he was doing that is so toxic. There's no reason for that. Like literally, leave the kid alone. She's a 14-year-old girl. She's allowed to like Taylor Swift for God's sakes. So in my opinion, no, you're definitely not the jerk, but also I think your brother-in-law has no right to ever go to Colorado with you guys, because his behavior, both past and present, in my opinion, is absolutely unacceptable, and that is not something that you should put up with in the slightest. My girlfriend told me she went to dinner with a male coworker, ended up getting hammered, and slept at his house, and now I'm at a point where I'm not sure if I need to talk to her about this, or if there's other options that might be available. Here's what happened. Okay, so me and my girlfriend have been together for about a year and a half, and things have been pretty great. And for reference, we've lived together for about a year, as she moved to my state after some long distance. Now, to start things out, we've had our issues recently, and these issues have been putting stress on the relationship. Recently, she got a new job and decided to take a break between jobs and go home and visit family and workmates that lived about an hour from her home. Her main reason for going into the city was to see her coworker, who's another female, that she wanted to stay with for a night or two. She also mentioned another male coworker wanted to take her out for dinner and celebrate her leaving the company. Now, I didn't have much time to react and ask her about it, as it was kind of just brushed off, even though I didn't think much of it as I did trust her. The day she left the city from her hometown where she was staying was also the night she was supposed to be going out for dinner with a male coworker. She went radio silent from the time she left for the city. I texted her at 2:00 p.m. just asking her how the drive was, and I got no response. Another message was sent at 9 o'clock with no response, and another at 11:30, and eventually I just fell asleep. Now, in the morning, I was expecting a message, but still, I didn't get anything. And by the way, this is a woman who has hounded me in the past for not texting and checking up on her enough. Anyways, I texted her at midday, and she said she had just woke up, she had a wild night, she did substances and had alcohol, which is pretty rare for her these days, and had been throwing up all morning. Now, I was quite annoyed and worried that I hadn't received any update from her until now, and told her I would call her after work to talk about her night. Well, after that message, I did something that I am a little ashamed of. I turned on her cell phone that she didn't wipe and tracked her location. She was not in the hotel, but outside the city, a little in the suburbs. I then opened up her messages to this coworker and found messages between the two of them. p.m. He told her to come to his place and start drinking there and then go out to some bars later. The messages seemed very innocent and not something I'd even consider flirting. I checked her location throughout the day and she never left until I messaged her below. I then messaged her after work and she told me that she went to a hospital as she had been vomiting all day and snapped me some proof. I then called her after she recovered slightly and I talked to her about her night, but she really just fast forward through the story and was upfront about everything. Told me she went to his house for drinks at around 4, where he then invited another girl over to party with them. They went out to bars, did some substances, and they all ended up back at his place, where she told me she passed out in his bed at 4 o'clock, while the other two continued to party until 6 o'clock in the morning. She even told me that he slept on the couch even though I didn't ask. What bugs me about this is when I asked her when she got back to the hotel, knowing she's been at his place recovering all day until about 5 o'clock p.m. before she got to the hospital, she told me she got back at the hotel at midday and took an Uber to the hospital, although he most likely just took her there. There's not much else to the story, and she hasn't really elaborated on the night out, besides the fact that they danced and played games at his house, all with other friends that she didn't know. So at this point, I'm not sure how to approach this situation. Do I start questioning and raising my concerns about how she went out drinking with a coworker and then slept at his place after a night out when she told me it was just dinner? Or do I also call her out on her lies and tell her I know where she was? I will end with this. My girlfriend is a very sociable person and generally keeps relationships with her ex-boyfriends, which I have no issue with. But I honestly found this situation a little concerning, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Oh man, I don't blame you at all for being really freaked out by this, because honestly, this sounds really sketchy. So no, you would not be in the wrong for trying to talk to your girlfriend about this, because what you're describing, in my opinion, sounds incredibly weird. An entitled Karen takes all the good seats at a cafe as she literally goes on a power trip and takes way more seats than she and her daughter are ever going to use. But thankfully, karma came their way in the form of a stubborn couple who wasn't willing to take her crap, resulting in one of the funniest interactions I've ever seen in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so my local Barnes & Nobles in Texas is not that large. The cafe has seating for about 30 people tops, with most of those at 6 to 7 tables away from the window. We also only have one counter across from the barista station with seats for about 4 people. The counter is immediately to the left as soon as you enter the cafe area. These are close to the window, and they are coveted seats if you can't get a table alongside the window. Being a Barnes & Noble nerd, I always know when to show up and get a good table close to the windows. Well, I managed to snag one of those tables as always, with the window to my right, the counter seating directly in front of me, and the register and serving area to my right. I was happy to get a window side table, as I often cannot, and not have to sit at the counter with its 4 stools. As I was enjoying my coffee and magazines, I noticed that the 4 stools at the counter were only half occupied. There was a tallish 50-something-year-old blonde woman and her 17-year-old daughter 2 stools away. The trouble is, they had plopped their clothing and backpacks on the other stools as some way of taking up 4 stools instead of the 2 that they needed. The daughter was perusing the store and wasn't even using her seat, but the mom had them taken with backpacks and a purse to save them. I actually saw a couple come in and were denied a seat at the counter due to the mom telling them that those seats were occupied. And when the daughter eventually returned, mom seemed to celebrate her victory with her. After the second time I saw this happen, I put away my magazine and I decided to have some fun. When a third couple came in and were driven away by this Karen, I smiled and waved them over. I offered them to take my seat, and for reference, I was taking up 1 seat at a 4-man table, and after they sat down, I explained to them what was going on. They were a little put out by being denied a decent seat at the counter, and it was then that they decided to take my advice. So they walked 10 feet back to the counter and they pulled out the stools, only to be told by mom that those seats were taken. But you know what? They plopped their butts in the seats anyways, and they told this Karen that they'd be happy to move when the owner returned. Well, the mom indignantly took the backpacks and the purse from the left 2 seats and pouted for a while just looking around. The daughter came back and a smallish argument ensued, and this stubborn couple offered to move when the others came by to reclaim their seats. Well, this entitled Karen was very put out and was angry that her scam was not working. She wound up putting both backpacks and daughter's purses on the other 2 seats, and this couple ignored her and just enjoyed their coffee. And naturally, she left very soon after that. After that, this stubborn couple turned around and gave me a smile with a thumbs up. And honestly, I was so glad to witness this happening. Okay, I love when stuff like this happens because I can't stand when people save the good seats for themselves only to not use them. If they had someone else coming along, I would completely understand, but it seems like they just wanted like elbow room, even though I'm assuming there was probably plenty of space by those spots. So they were just being selfish, like that's all this comes down to. They didn't want to share their seats with anybody else and they wanted it all for themselves. And that's not fair. Like, I don't care how you stretch it, that is not fair for anybody else coming in. So honestly, I love the fact that you kind of coordinated this in a roundabout way, because this Karen and her daughter absolutely deserved it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for handing over my dad's tax returns over to my mom just to help her extend her alimony with her husband? Because right now my dad says I breached his privacy, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 37-year-old male, and I spent most of my adult life working for my parents' company. It's a small but successful firm that does litigation support, architectural design, project management, and engineering consulting. Our whole family helped build it. After school, weekends, holidays, you name it, we were there. And I started working there full-time right after high school. My parents had a rocky marriage, mostly due to my father's chronic infidelity. He used the company's resources to carry on multiple affairs and even hired ladies of the night for himself and for his clients, if you know what I mean. When my parents divorced in 2011, all of this came out. My sister and I sided with our mother, while our older half-brother, who is my mom's son from a previous marriage, took our father's side. Fast forward, and a couple of years later, I split with my son's mother. My father then hired a lawyer for her, and not just any lawyer, but the wife of a longtime client of his who had also been a close confidant during his divorce. This wife and husband legal team took my custody case all the way to trial. During the trial, it had came out that they had been given my privileged medical records by my father. The judge admonished the attorney but didn't pursue any serious disciplinary action. Ultimately, we ended up with split custody after they racked up over $140,000 in legal fees. I then ended up suing my father over the breach of my privacy, and after 2 years of litigation, I dropped the case because my sister convinced me to, all for the sake of our mom. In exchange, my father agreed he would help her out as she aged and dealt with health issues. Fast forward to now, and my father makes over $1.2 million a year and has completely cut my mom off from alimony. She has health problems and no other income. Recently, he left his tax returns open on my laptop, so I gave them to my mom so she could try to extend her alimony. Now, my father says I crossed a line and that I'm violating his privacy and being vindictive, but I feel like my dad's the one who broke trust first years ago. And just to be explicitly clear, my father handed the documents to me, and by doing so, he waived his privacy rights. The taxes show that his income has been 3 times the amount his alimony was based on since about 2 years prior to his divorce. And so on that end, I feel like it's just incredibly dishonest. So truly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Okay, I can't speak on any legality of any of this because I just don't know the details of what is and isn't legal. But seriously, if I was in your shoes, I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing. Your dad literally screwed over your mom. He cheated on her God knows how many times, and then has the audacity to not even give her the amount that she's owed. So no, with all things considered, I don't think you're the jerk here, because I think if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for having Dr. Pepper in my water bottle at the gym? Because after my boyfriend drank some of it, he spit it out in a fit of rage, furious that it wasn't water like he was expecting. And at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 20-year-old female, and I want to start off by saying that I love Dr. Pepper. I probably drink like a can a day, which I totally know isn't great, but I eat super healthy and I go to the gym religiously, which is where this incident took place. Me and my boyfriend, who we will call Charlie, usually work out together. Yesterday evening, before we went to the gym, I filled up my water bottle with Dr. Pepper. I hadn't had one yet that day, and I was craving it so bad. If I needed actual water at the gym, I was just planning on drinking from the water fountain, so my boyfriend didn't have limited water because I was bringing an extra. I made sure to tell Charlie this as he really doesn't like Dr. Pepper, and I didn't want him drinking some from my water bottle. And for reference, we sometimes will take sips from each other's bottles. He just said, okay, no problem, and that he'll avoid my bottle. Well, fast forward to when we were wrapping up at the gym, and Charlie had just had an intense set and just grabbed the first bottle he saw, which just so happened to be mine. Before I could even look or react, he was spitting the Dr. Pepper out on the ground. He was sputtering angrily at me and told me that it was such a stupid idea to put Dr. Pepper in my bottle and that I should have yelled to him when he picked it up. I told him I'm sorry that he had a mouthful of Dr. Pepper when he was so out of breath and just wanted some water, but that I didn't have any time to tell him because he was just too quick and I was focused on counting my own sets. Well, he wouldn't take this as an answer and just stormed off, which was super embarrassing as I was the one who had to clean up his mess. By the time I ran out of the gym to catch up with him, he had already messaged me that he had left in an Uber. He's only sent me one text message since yesterday, saying that we'll talk about my Dr. Pepper thing later. I'm literally so confused and I just need to know if I was in the wrong, because right now I'm not sure what to do. Okay, your boyfriend is kind of a weirdo. You literally told him, hey, I have Dr. Pepper in this bottle, don't drink it. And he even acknowledged like, okay, no problem, I'll avoid it if I see it. But then he turns around, probably in front of a bunch of people, drinks a Dr. Pepper, and then spits it out on the ground like a toddler. Like, hey, guess what, stupid? You literally knew it was there, but you decided to ignore it anyways, and then embarrass your girlfriend in the process? Like, what's going on right now? That's not fair. You can't treat someone like that. And for him to even walk away and make you clean up after him? Like, no, I don't think so. That is not okay. That kind of behavior is super immature, and there is no good reason to be doing that. And your boyfriend absolutely owes you an apology. Like, I'm sure you weren't the only ones in the gym, and I'm sure other people were watching, and to have someone do an outburst like that is so cringy and so weird. So no, you're not the jerk for bringing Dr. Pepper to the gym. You literally warned him about it, and he still made a huge deal about this. So seriously, the only thing that he needs to discuss is how he's going to apologize to you for the way that he treated you, because that, in my opinion, was completely uncalled for. Am I the jerk for asking my neighbor to pay for damages for his trampoline that flew onto my yard during a storm and literally damaged my fence and my yard? Because right now he's claiming it's not his problem, and at this point, I'm honestly super frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so today at about 5 o'clock p.m., I got text messages from our great next door neighbor who said that a trampoline came flying in a storm and damaged our fence and our barn behind our house. I assessed our security system via my cell phone, and I found out the trampoline came from the neighbors across the street. Now, as a side note, we are not friends with these neighbors, but up to this point have had no problems with them. I inspected the damage and our fence was destroyed and almost completely knocked flat. The trampoline hit the barn so hard, it dented the metal walls and broke 2 panels on the garage door. There were all sorts of other minor scraping along the sides of the barn as well. As I was surveying the damage, the husband of the neighbors across the street came walking up the driveway, and he did not appear concerned at all, and more than anything, he seemed really annoyed. I held our broken gate open for him to enter the yard and look at the damages with me. After reviewing the damage together, he asked me what I wanted to do about the damages. I was still a little shocked, and I said, well, your trampoline caused the damages, so you are responsible. And I'm guessing the damages were between $5,000 to $10,000. The fence was decorative aluminum to appear like wrought iron, and the damaged section was maybe 4 to 5 panels and cost us approximately $4,000 3 years ago. The garage door was insulated and was around $3,000 2 years ago, but I have no idea how to estimate the cost of repair for the dented, scraped, and damaged metal walls of the barn, which again is only 2 years old. The neighbor across the street then said, well, it's all damage to your property, so you should put all the damages through your insurance. Well, I was again shocked and incredulous at the audacity of this person. I then told him I'm an attorney and I actually am in my state. Your failure to secure the trampoline caused it to fly into my yard and destroy my fence and damage my barn. I'm not putting a claim on my insurance because I don't want my premiums to increase. I have great insurance and an umbrella due to the ponds on the property, and I have a separate rider for the barn just to be safe. And due to my profession, I made sure I have great insurance. I then told him I can either get quotes to fix the damages that you can pay for, or you can make a claim against your homeowner's insurance. He said to me, well, I'm not paying cash and I'm not making a claim against my insurance. This was an act of God. So I said to him, okay, I'm sorry you see it that way, but my firm sues around 200 cases per week, and I'm not trying to brag, it's just a fact. So suing one more will not be that difficult. Well, it's then that my neighbor decided to finally agree to put his homeowners on notice and exchange his phone number with me. Several colleagues and my mentor said he probably never put the trampoline on his insurance, and an unreported trampoline can lead to cancellation of his homeowner's insurance. So seriously, am I the jerk for insisting that he pay for the damages caused by his trampoline flying onto my property, regardless of how it happened? Because right now, I'm not sure what to do. You are not the jerk in the slightest. This guy is 100% responsible in my uneducated and unqualified opinion, and I can't believe he would try to dodge responsibility like that. Seriously, this isn't an act of God. This guy didn't tie down his trampoline and now it hit your property. Like seriously, this falls on his shoulders entirely. So yeah, hopefully he gets the picture, because I'm sure this is an easy case for someone like yourself, especially when you handle stuff like this on a daily basis. My parents control just about every aspect of my life, and despite the fact that I'm 20 years old and still in college, and also unfortunately still living with them, I feel like I'm at my breaking point, as I feel they're changing me for the worst, leaving me in a situation where I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for my entire life, my parents have been strict. I've always been known as the friend who can't stay out past 8 o'clock p.m. or can't do this or that unless my parents know one of my friends personally and really well, like if they were good friends with my parents. When I was under 18 years old, my parents wouldn't let me hang out with a friend unless they came over to my house first, and my parents met them to see what they were like as a person. Also, there were some things that they were particularly strict about, like with money. When I was 18, I went to my senior prom, and when I was going to buy my dress, my dad gave me $100 bill to go get a prom dress after school one day. He specifically told me to keep the money in my car, but instead I kept it zipped up in my backpack all day. And when I told him that, my God, he flew off the handle and threatened to take away my money because I'm apparently irresponsible with it. He said a kid could have stole my money or I could have lost it, but I'm responsible with money, or at least I thought I was. I felt better having $100 on me rather than in my car, but I don't know. I guess I should have just left it locked in my car. I remember crying at the lunch table while he was chewing me out on the phone, and my friends were all very concerned. My dad said because I didn't listen to his specific directions, I didn't deserve to go to prom or even carry money around. I almost lost that privilege, but I did end up going to prom even though he complained about it the entire night. He told me he likes a daughter who is loyal and obeys his commands, and I did the opposite of that day. I also wasn't a bad kid at all in school. Teachers looked up to me and I tutored other students. I had nearly a 4.0 GPA, but strangely, my parents still treat me like some kind of dumb teenager who doesn't know anything. It's frustrating trying to prove to your parents that you are a responsible adult, and then you make a small mistake that just really disappoints them. Flash forward to now, and I'm 20 years old in community college, still living with my parents, and nothing much has changed. I have a part-time job now, but my parents are still strict. I cannot stay out after 11 o'clock p.m. now unless I have a good reason to be out that late. I still cannot hang out with certain friends or go certain places if they think those people are bad influences on me, or if the place I'm going to is a ripoff or too far away to travel, as they would put it. They also say that my life revolves around theirs. Any plans I make affects theirs for the day, and most of the plans they make, in my honest opinion, aren't even that important. Like just little house projects that keep themselves busy with, for example, yard work or working on the car, cleaning, and stuff like that. And they always want my help with these things, and when I tell them I have a test to study for or an assignment to complete, they say I should have been proactive and got it done before the day they needed my help on one of their projects. Anyways, a few days ago, I started a new relationship with this guy, and he is really awesome to me. He treats me well, he is super kind and respectful, and is willing to put up with my strict parents. I'm just afraid the relationship won't last long because of how strict my parents are. I told my mom I have a boyfriend now, and she was disappointed in me about it, and went on this lesson about how I need to be responsible and not ruin my life, and why I should wait until I'm 25 to date anybody. However, she did wish me the best of luck and hope for the best whilst also expressing her disapproval of it. As for my dad, I'm not even going to bother telling him about my relationship for now because I know he will have a big problem with it. If I mentioned that I was in a relationship, he would immediately chew me out and force me to break up with the person I was with. It was either that or make him come over so he can meet him first and then see if he's even a good guy for me. Then he forces us to break up anyways because apparently I'm too young for a relationship and should wait until I'm 35 to date anybody because I'm not mature enough in my 20s to make a decision like that. I don't want to keep my boyfriend a secret from my dad, but I also don't want my dad to disown me and look down on me for being in a relationship. Now that I'm 20, I just want my parents to stay out of my personal business at least. They always want to know what I'm up to, where I'm at, who I'm with, etc. I just want to be able to enjoy myself without them getting into my business constantly. Even when I don't get out of class or work on time, they call me until I answer the phone and ask why I didn't call. I guess I should be grateful that they care, but I feel like there's a point where it becomes more overbearing and stunting my growth as an individual rather than being good parents. Now, I always have them in the back of my mind whenever I'm planning things or wanting to do something all by myself. I feel like I became the person they want me to be and not who I want to be. And at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. Okay, this sounds miserable and I would not want to live in that kind of environment. I mean, think about it. These people are seriously locking you down and not allowing you to do anything with your life. Now, I know for me, if I was in that situation, I would 100% be planning to move out. And from the sounds of it, the original poster is trying that right now. They don't have a lot of money and they're trying to save up so they can get an apartment somewhere. So hopefully that happens sooner than later because what you're describing with your parents sounds absolutely miserable. And I know personally I would not want to put up with that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for refusing to split parking costs with my roommate after she made a big fuss over nothing? Here's what happened. Okay, so here's the situation. My roommate and older sister, let's call her Kay, demands that we split the parking for our apartment even though she is the only one with a car. We recently moved into a new apartment and we lived together before this in a different apartment, but for safety reasons we had to move to our current place last month. Our lease provides 2 covered parking spots, but we have to have 2 cars registered under our apartment in order to get 2 parking passes. Since I don't have a car, as mine got stolen a few months ago, only she has got a parking pass. She had a talk with me right after we signed the lease to this apartment, where she, very condescendingly, told me that I was not going to get my parking pass because I don't have a car, and it would stay as a guest-only parking pass. Despite the aggressive tone she used, I agreed with her until she told me that that I would not be able to let my boyfriend borrow it when he sleeps over. After that talk, I told her I would not be paying for parking if I do not get to use my half however I please. And then we just left it at that. Fast forward and we just got our first monthly bill, and I sat her down to talk about how much each of us had left to pay since we've both been paying it off throughout the month of March. I started by subtracting parking costs from the total and then dividing it by 2 in order to get my fair half. Kay then immediately started questioning my math, asking why I'm subtracting that amount, but I explained that's what we agreed on before moving into this new apartment. Kay claims that since the parking costs are the same for 1 or 2 passes, then that means I should have to pay for half. I immediately agreed to pay for half of it and informed her I will go register my boyfriend's car so I can get the second parking pass and use it however I want. I was even generous enough to tell her when her boyfriend visits, I can let him borrow it for the weekend as long as his visit doesn't overlap with my boyfriend visiting me. For added context, my boyfriend is a full-time student and also has a full-time job, which means he gets 1 day off a week, so he sleeps over the night before his day off and his night off and leaves the day after pretty early. Kay's boyfriend lives 6 hours away and doesn't get to visit as often, and we're talking maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks. Kay believes it's not fair for both of us to pay for parking, but only my boyfriend gets to park nearby, while her boyfriend has to park his work truck further away from our apartment. I tried explaining to her that that was not the case, and that she would be paying for the parking pass she uses in her car, and I would be paying for my own parking pass to do with it whatever I pleased, including letting my boyfriend borrow it when he sleeps over. The argument just went in circles over and over again, with her saying it's not fair that her boyfriend doesn't visit as often as mine, and he would have to still park far away, but my boyfriend visits very often and gets to park nearby every time. I want to add that she had the master bedroom in our past apartment, and we didn't pay any difference in price because parking was already included in the rent, not an additional cost like here. I have the master in our current apartment because we had agreed it was a fair trade-off since she had the better bedroom last time, but now she's taking it back, claiming that since I have the better room, I should have to pay extra in rent, or I could just make it up by splitting parking costs while reaping none of the benefits. So truly, am I the jerk? Because right now I'm super frustrated. No, this is so dumb. Your roommate's being super selfish. They're trying to be like, yeah, but what about my boyfriend? And it's like, dude, your boyfriend is never here. He visits once every 2 months, whereas your boyfriend is here pretty much all the time. And it also only makes sense that you have a parking pass just in case you need one. Who knows, maybe you get the car back and you need that to get around. So no, you're not the jerk, and I think your roommate's being an idiot, and I don't blame you for being frustrated. Am I the jerk for telling off my class president and refusing to cooperate, all because she enlisted me in a school event without my consent? Because right now my classmates are saying that I'm the jerk for not cooperating, as I could potentially get all of us in trouble for not being involved. But despite the fact that I was never asked explicitly to be a part of this, I'm honestly now feeling very frustrated, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. To start things off, I'm an 18-year-old female and I'm currently in high school. Not too long ago, there was a school event that was organized to celebrate our trilingual institution, meaning that we held inter-class competitions in our local language, our national language, and in English. Every class is required to send 1 or 2 representatives per competition branch. Now, compared to my classmates, I am quite fluent in English, but I had another competition outside of my school that I needed to prepare for, so I did not enlist myself. About 2 weeks before the day of the event, the guidebook was sent to my class's group chat, as well as a list of who will be participating. Our class president, who's also an 18-year-old female, urged us to enlist ourselves, but since I was busy, I decided to ignore it. Fast forward a week after that, and at 7 p.m. on a Friday, my class president sent me a direct message. She asked me if I've already submitted the video for the upcoming school event's English speech contest. When I asked for further information, she sent me a screenshot of the list in the class group chat showing that my name was on their list under English speech contest. Well, she admonished me for not paying attention since she tagged me and the other contestants literally 5 days beforehand. In fact, she said to me, "You didn't know that you were enlisted as a participant? Oh, come on. We've already enlisted you in the group chat since like a week ago." When I checked the actual list, I found that above it, she had conveniently cropped out a text where she had said that this was a revised list composed by herself and our class's vice president, and apparently we can't protest this as they've officially registered the people on the list. She literally said there's no excuses. Well, I screenshotted that specific text and I circled the no excuses part before sending it to her. I told her that in that entire week after she registered me and our other classmates, neither she nor her vice president ever bothered to check in with me about whether or not I'm going to be able to participate. I also emphasized the fact that only now, less than 5 hours before the deadline, did any of them bother to text me. At the end of my text, I told her that everything must be done with consent and that there was no such thing as no excuses, considering that we live in a democratic country. Well, the class president left me on red, so you know what? I said to myself, fine, whatever. A couple of days later, it's Monday again, and the class president and vice president did not bring up this issue. My parents say that I'm right for feeling slighted, while some of my classmates have said that I'm the jerk for refusing to cooperate and potentially getting the entire class in trouble. So seriously, am I the jerk? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. I would not buy into this for a second. Because honestly, you have it right. No one's gonna be like, there's no excuses. We already registered. You can't say no. But it's like, no, I'm not gonna agree to this. You literally didn't even ask me, and you just signed me up because I'm the only person that can speak English, apparently. And to any classmate who's trying to be like, wow, you're gonna get all of us in trouble. Just cooperate. It's like, no, stupid. The only person that's getting in trouble is the class president and the vice president. You're not the jerk for not wanting to do something that you didn't sign up for. That's an insane precedent to set, and honestly, I can't stand anybody trying to like force you into this. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely go like to a higher up or some kind of principal figure and show them everything that's happened against you, because these people literally have tried to sign you up for something against your will, almost as if they're gonna like make you do it in some kind of way. And it's like, yeah, okay, buddy, like you're gonna make me do anything, because the way they handle this is incredibly idiotic and you don't deserve to deal with this in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for yelling at a mom and her kid to get out of my house after they literally make a mess of everything? Because right now I'm being slandered on Facebook and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 28-year-old female, and a few months ago I started a new Dungeons & Dragons campaign and invited a few friends. One of them, who we will call Sarah, asked if her friend, who we will call Anne, could join us. For reference, Anne is a mom who doesn't get many chances to hang out with adults, so I agreed, even though I knew she might be flaky due to childcare responsibilities. I then asked Anne if she could at least attend the first few sessions to get familiar with the game, and she agreed. She then proceeded to cancel, mostly last minute, every single proposed first session for the next 2 months. I told her I'm sorry, but if she can't make it to the next proposed session, she won't be in the long campaigns, but still is welcome to join any one-shots. She then apologized and said that she will make it. Well, to her credit, she did make it, but she brought her toddler with her without asking me first. As soon as they came, the kid needed to use the bathroom, and he made a mess since he can't fully use an adult toilet yet. I told Anne that's fine, but asked her to please clean it up. And when I said this surprised her, and she started being a bit on edge. We finally sat down at the table, and the kids started running around, looking for things to do. I was a bit stressed out by this, and Anne noticed and put him in her lap. But now the kid was at the table, which was covered in mini figurines, dice, pretty pictures, and maps, most of which being a choking hazard, along with glasses of various drinks. The kids started fussing about wanting to play with them, and I was telling Anne no because it's not safe, but she told me he's gentle and doesn't put stuff in his mouth. And quite literally, we were bickering while her kid was throwing a tantrum. After the kid knocked over a glass, I loudly asked her to step out into the backyard and calm him down for a bit while I make the table safer. Well, she did, even though she was visibly embarrassed, and I removed everything except for plain-looking papers, some pens, and paper cups. I also did my best to calm down, as this entire thing stressed me out beyond end. They came back and things were fine for a minute. That is, until my dog came out of my bedroom to drink water. Now, I don't have many house rules, but I have one that's really important. Please ignore the dog. And they were informed of that before coming over. Well, the kid spotted her and yelled, "Doggy!" And Anne put her kid down to say hi to the dog, where he then made a full-speed beeline at my dog while making grabbing motions and yelling. I stopped him by stepping out in front of him. He ran into me, fell down, and started crying. It was here that Anne started screaming at me, but you know what? I screamed back and very swiftly told her to get the F out of my house. Sarah was annoyed and told us that it took them an hour and a half to get to me, and then went with Anne since they carpooled together. The rest of the group stayed, and it was awkward for half an hour or so, but we ended up having fun, and they even stayed for the night. I then woke up to the local Facebook groups and people's Instagram stories calling me a controlling jerk, saying I'm discriminating against various players, being too strict, and I have a dangerous dog. To add insult to injury, Sarah, who I've been friends with for years, is now not speaking to me. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I don't know what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk. First and foremost, I think Anne in this story is a complete moron, and the fact that she doesn't realize how bad she's acting is just so uncalled for. I mean, she brought her kid over without asking first, and just said, "Oh yeah, this'll be fine, don't worry about it. He's gonna play with us, he's really gentle." And then literally in that same sentence, that kid pushes over a glass and ruins everything on the board. Like, I don't think so. That's not gonna happen. That's not okay. But for Anne to let the kid down and start running at the dog, you know, the same dog they were told to ignore, who very well could have gone ballistic with this kind of overstimulation. Like, seriously, what's going on right now? How crappy of a parent do you need to be to allow your kid to go near a dog that, guess what, you don't know anything about. You don't know if that's a nice dog or a mean dog. You don't know if that dog's super aggressive or it's like a rescue or something like that, so it might have like a negative reaction to children. Like seriously, what were you thinking? Why would you do that? Because I know if I was in the original poster's shoes, I absolutely would have blocked that annoying demon spawn from getting near my dog. And the fact that Anne tried to blame that on you and be like, your dog's dangerous. It's like, no, Anne, you're a terrible parent and your kid has no self-control. So truly, I'm glad you kicked them out of your house because honestly, that is the best course of action in my opinion. Because if her flaking out several times before wasn't a good indication that she sucks as a person, then her bringing her kid along and blaming you for all the problems she started is a really good indication that she's going to be a problem player pretty much no matter what. My boyfriend's dad is constantly making degrading insults towards me while defending the fact that he says they're jokes and that they don't actually mean anything. But after enduring this for so long, I'm honestly at a breaking point and I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've been with my boyfriend for 1.5 years and I've genuinely tried with his dad, but I feel like I'm at my limit. Reason being is that his dad constantly makes comments that are degrading and make me feel deeply uncomfortable. He will constantly refer to me by horrible names and things that are just unbelievably inappropriate. He makes remarks about my eating, saying things like, you don't stop eating, you just keep sucking food up. My God, don't tell me you're eating again. I mean, what don't you eat? And the list goes on and on. I already struggle with body image, and my boyfriend and his parents are aware of this, so having someone make these comments feels humiliating, especially when I'm at a very healthy weight. I'm toned and I work out 5 times a week. It's not even about my body. It's the constant need to comment on what I'm eating. He will sometimes cook Sunday dinner and do me one too, and then berate me for eating it quickly. He also constantly comments on my appearance. He's told me I shouldn't wear makeup around the house and that I should wear light clothing instead of black. Before we went on holiday together, his parents sat me down and told me I should stop wearing so much makeup. And for reference, I've worn gothic smoky eye makeup for like 10 years because you know what? I like it. They also said I shouldn't wear makeup during the day on holidays because according to them, it will melt off. But I was also told I could wear it on the evenings. And my boyfriend defended this by saying they just want me to feel more confident. When we were on holiday together, his dad was especially nasty to me, and I felt completely trapped in a foreign country. I couldn't even have alcohol without being called an alcoholic. I felt trapped and it put a strain on my relationship. He also frequently looks me up and down inappropriately, in front of my boyfriend too, mind you, which makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. In fact, even their own pets are afraid of him. The part that's really hard to navigate is that my boyfriend is always chasing his dad's approval. His dad was so cruel and cold to him growing up that they only formed a relationship after COVID, despite always living together. His dad always favored his only sister, which is ironic given how he talks about women. And yet my boyfriend insists that his dad loves me and is protective of me, saying that he would go to war for me. But that literally doesn't match anything I experienced from him. My boyfriend has confronted his dad before, telling him to stop with the name calling, and his dad hugged me and apologized, saying it was just a joke and that he would be more careful. But since then, it feels like he's been on a mission to push my boundaries even further, almost to prove that I can't tell him what to do. And my boyfriend told me I shouldn't expect his dad to change and that his dad shouldn't have to walk on eggshells. I love my boyfriend and I love the time we spend together, but I'm at the point where I want to completely avoid his dad because he makes me feel so uncomfortable. My body literally goes into fight or flight when I see him. So how do I set boundaries when my boyfriend doesn't seem to think I should? What should I do? Okay, this is messed up across the board in my opinion, because the fact that your boyfriend doesn't see this as a problem, in my opinion, is a massive red flag. That is not something I would take lightly because he really should be on your side. You saying, oh my gosh, I feel uncomfortable by this, should be more than enough for him to step in and be like, wait a second, this can't happen anymore. Because that guy's dad sounds like a toxic piece of work. It doesn't sound like he cares about you at all, and he just wants to berate you and make fun of you and treat you like garbage. And most likely it's from his own amusement or something like that. So no, this is not okay, this is not normal, and I don't blame you for being upset. Because if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. An entitled Karen skips in front of me in a long line for food after I'd been waiting there for about 10 minutes. But after she tried to justify her reasoning, as well as trying to put me down at the age of 8 years old, my mom steps in and pops off on this lady in a way that she truly was not expecting, making this one of the most satisfying moments of my life so far. Here's what happened. So this happened when I was around 8 years old, when I encountered my first ever entitled Karen. For context, me and my mother were visiting her old high school for a reunion of hers, and the building had a vending machine of microwavable foods, including cheeseburgers, hot dogs, and popcorn. I chose the cheeseburger and the line was huge. I mean, there were like so many people in line. So I went back and I sat with my mom to wait. I returned back to the line after noticing that it got shorter, but as I was about to put my food in the microwave, this lady who looked to be in about her 40s immediately skipped in front of me. So I said to her, excuse me ma'am, I was standing in front of you, looking at me with a sickening sickeningly sweet expression, this entitled Karen said to me, "I'm sorry, sweetie, but I stepped out of line to talk to a friend, so I was actually in front of you." I then looked at her and I said, "But you were never in line." At this point, she was sneering at me with a condescending look in her eye. She said to me, "Please don't talk back to me, sweetheart. Either go find your mother or suck it up and stand at the back of the line. I'm not gonna argue with a child." I was upset, and being that I was only 8 years old, I pouted just a little bit. But instead of going to the back of the line, I went and told my mom what happened. And to say that she showed anger fast was an understatement. She immediately went on Mama Bear mode and took my hand, and we stomped back up to the line. Well, this entitled Karen noticed my mother and said, "What do you want?" My mom then says to her, "Did you just skip my kid? She was waiting in this line for about 10 minutes before you showed up." The Karen lets out a snort and says, "So what if I did? She's a big girl, she'll get over it." My mom is obviously getting angry at this point, and she says to her, "She is 8 years old, are you kidding me? You can't be the bigger person and go to the back of the line. You were obviously not in line, so grow up and get in the back." The entitled Karen rolls her eyes and says, "Whatever." She then looks at me and says, "I'm sorry, kid." But my mom was not having any of that. She said to this Karen, "Don't talk to my child now, when you could have avoided this whole ordeal by just going to the back of the line." At this point, the Karen was screaming at my mom, claiming that I was lying and that she was a terrible mother. She accused her of raising a spoiled brat and yelled at me, calling me a few choice words. I then started crying because I was a pretty sensitive kid. One of the high school security guards noticed the noise and broke up the fight. The Karen immediately started acting innocent and accused me of skipping her, which obviously wasn't true. The security guard luckily was watching the entire interaction and told the Karen to either get in the back of the line and wait, or she could leave the premises. Well, she didn't like that and started to throw a temper tantrum, screaming about how she was going to sue my mom, the guard, and me. But after another threat from the guard, she sucked it up and stormed to the back of the line. I got to microwave my stuff and I walked back to my mother, and I honestly couldn't resist a bit of childish pettiness and revenge. So I smirked smugly at the Karen, who was now fuming at this point, while also sticking my tongue out at her. She was about to scream, but instead she just muttered the word brat under her breath. So I guess the moral of the story is that you shouldn't try to skip the line, because regardless, it's a really crappy thing to do. Yeah, this Karen was seriously out of line. You mean to tell me after not getting her way, she not only throws a temper tantrum, but then she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna sue everybody, especially you," and then points at like the 8-year-old version of you. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm just trying to get like this food or whatever. You're the one that's skipping in front of an 8-year-old and trying to justify it. Like, who's the real bad guy here? I don't think it's me. I'm pretty sure it's you. So yeah, I love this story so much, and honestly, it is so nice to see a Karen get shut down in her place. An entitled idiotic customer literally ignores all the warnings I give him when it comes to returning a product at our store, because after he came in the next day trying to return a product that we could only give partial credit back for, he's now pissed off, claiming that he never knew any of the things that I literally explained to him 24 hours prior. And now I'm honestly super frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Many years ago, the shop I worked in had a strict policy. They had a restocking fee on all returns unless the product was actually faulty. Usually people understood when we explained we can't sell an open product as new, so if it simply wasn't to their liking, we would offer a partial refund. Well, not everybody understood this, especially for the guy I'm about to describe. On the first visit, the customer asked about a product. We discuss it in detail and I answer every question that he has. The customer then says to me, "If it doesn't work, can I return it?" I explain to him by saying, well, if it's faulty, certainly. If it's not faulty, there is a restocking fee, and you would need your receipt, and it's up to 12 months and all the other details that might need to be known. So the customer buys whatever it is. Well, fast forward, and on the second visit, the customer wants to return the product. I say to him, "Okay, can I ask why you need to return it?" The customer then says, "Well, it doesn't do what I want it to." I then ask further and I say, "Okay, well, how so?" The customer says, "Well, I needed to do all this other stuff and it just doesn't do that," as he then went into detail about all the things he needs this thing to do. I say to him, "Okay, no problem. We can refund you, but as it's not faulty, it will be a partial refund." He then asks the magic question, "Well, why is it a partial refund?" So I have to explain once again, well, it's because it's not faulty. We can't resell this product with an open box and a broken seal as a new item. As there's nothing wrong with it, we can allow you to return it, but not for full price. The customer then starts shouting, "Well, that's not fair. Why should I have to pay for something that I don't want?" But I say to him, "Well, you're returning it open and used. It's now a secondhand item. We won't be able to charge full price on it for the next customer. If you decided you don't want this anymore, as a courtesy, we will accept it back, minus any cost that we will incur." The customer then said to me, "Well, I don't agree to that." But I explained to him, "Sir, I was the one who sold this to you yesterday. I remember our conversation, including when I explained the restocking fee on non-faulty items. So yes, you did indeed agree to this." The customer then said, "Oh, I never said that." But I had to further explain by saying, "Well, I'm not saying you spoke the words "I agree to the terms of the sale" out loud, but I am saying that I explained to you the terms of the sale and then you purchased the item. And those two things happen in that order. With that knowledge, you could have decided not to purchase the item, but you did it anyways. So it was an agreement to the terms of the sale. The customer then just came back and said, well, no, it wasn't. But I said to him, you said it isn't faulty. We said we would offer a partial refund if it was returned non-faulty. And here we are offering you a partial refund exactly as we discussed before you went ahead with a sale. The customer then tried to double back as if I wasn't paying attention and said, well, it is faulty. When I asked him how so, he said to me, well, it doesn't do all the things that I want. So I responded back by saying, well, yeah, correct, it doesn't. It wasn't designed to do all those extra things. You asked a number of questions about it yesterday, and I answered all of them at length, and the things that you're wanting were never mentioned. So it's not faulty if it does everything it was designed to do. The customer then said that they can't make use of it, but I explained that as a courtesy, we offer a partial refund. He then said, well, that's not good enough. And at this point, all I could say was, okay. The customer then asked me what I meant by okay, and I just responded by saying, I personally answered every question you asked about this item, including the one you had about refunds. You were fully aware of the terms of the sale, and you made the choice to buy it. It is now your item. It literally belongs to you. We are offering a partial refund on a non-faulty item, and you have said that offer is not good enough. There's no obligation on your part to accept our offer. This is definitely your choice as well. The customer then looked at me and said, well, what do you expect me to do? And now I was gobsmacked. I seriously did not know what to say. So I just looked at him and I said, well, I'm not sure what you mean. I don't have any expectations of you. You can choose to accept our offer of a partial refund or not. That is for you to decide. Well, we never saw that one ever again, and honestly, it left me feeling very confused and very annoyed. Man, this customer did not know what they wanted. I mean, for me, the second I find out there's a partial refund at a place I'm buying something, that's when I decide, you know what, I'm just gonna go somewhere else, or I'm gonna shop online or something like that. Having a partial refund, in my opinion, is a stupid policy, and that is absolutely ridiculous, and I personally think that anybody should have a right to return something if they didn't use it, and if it's within a certain period of time that they can actually return it, like 30 days or 90 days or whatever might be going on. So that for me is a big red flag already, but this guy went ahead with it and is now trying to be like, well, I didn't agree to a partial refund. And it's like, yeah, dude, absolutely you did agree to this. All of this was explained to you and you still bought it. This is your own problem and not mine. And if you've ever worked customer service, then you know this feeling where you're like, dude, I literally explained all of this to you and you just ignored it and said, well, I didn't agree to that. It's like customers like this become so stupid all of a sudden, and it's like weaponizing competence or something like that. It is so annoying and I cannot stand it, especially when you're the person that helped this customer out and you know for a fact you went over every single detail with that guy. You went over what kind of product they're getting, all the things it does do and doesn't do, and all the stipulations associated with returns and having a receipt, while also having what looks like up to a 12-month period of hey, you can return it in this window. That's already a super generous offer. So for him, literally 24 hours later, to turn around and try to return it, all under the guise of oh, it doesn't do all the things I want it to do. It's like, dude, you're so dumb. Seriously, get a grip. But overall, I think you handled this really well because you did not allow this guy to bully you into getting his way. Because I guarantee you, someone like that absolutely would have pushed you around to get what they want. And that, in my opinion, is super unfair. My psycho grandfather tried to manipulate me, bribe me, and then force me into getting plastic surgery for my ear, as he was literally so obsessed with my ears and how they were completely misshaped that he went to crazy lengths just to force me into getting plastic surgery. He even went as far as to try and trick me into having surgery the same day just so I would get it done and be perfect in his eyes. And I'm honestly still blown away by the way he treated me. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 22-year-old male, and this is about my controlling grandfather who literally spent years trying to force me into plastic surgery. This is going to be a long one, so please buckle up. Now, for a bit of context, I was born with two slightly different shaped ears. One of them curls in a little, but it's not super noticeable unless you're staring at me from up close. It doesn't affect my life in any way, except that earbuds fall out more easily. Kids did tease me a little bit, but whatever. It was just how I looked. My grandfather, however, did not see it that way. To him, I wasn't perfect, and that was unacceptable. Looking back, I realized he was making comments about my ears since I was in preschool, but things really escalated when I turned 14 years old, which, for a bit of context, is the age that you can legally get plastic surgery in my former country. Practically every day, he would remind me of my hideous and atrocious ear. At the time, I lived with my mom, and he lived in the apartment below us. This meant that he had easy access to my life and never missed an opportunity to put me down. One day, after months of brainwashing, he took me to a fancy restaurant, just the two of us. Keep in mind, my mom and I were lower middle class, while he was more on the upper class side. I thought it was just a nice lunch, but when dessert arrived, he casually asked me, me, "So do you want to finally get plastic surgery and look normal?" And just like always, I told him no. I liked how I looked. I was unique. Now, what was his response, you might be wondering? He just silently stood up, paid the bill, yanked me by the arm, and dragged me to his car. He shoved me out in front of our apartment and drove off without another word. Now, he was supposed to watch me that evening since my mom had to work late, but instead he ignored me completely. I had no keys, so I sat outside for 6 hours until my mom came home. A few weeks later, he started talking to me again, acting like nothing had happened. One day, he even picked me up early from school and took me out to a restaurant. Strangely, for the first time in years, he didn't mention my ear. Not once. But instead, we just had fun. And over the next few weeks, he kept this up. We would go to movies, museums, my favorite restaurants. No insults, no guilt tripping. It honestly felt nice. But under the surface, there was a scheme going that honestly I didn't see coming. Because what my grandfather did next honestly blew my mind. Fast forward, and one day during a car ride home, he asked me, "What do you want the most and I'll buy it for you?" Well, asking an open-ended question like that to a 14-year-old left me ecstatic. So I asked him for a gaming PC. Well, without any hesitation, he drove me straight to the store and told me to pick out whatever I wanted, even setting a budget of $2,000. To me, that was an insane amount of money. I then just picked out my dream setup, practically shaking with excitement. Then, at the register, he turned to me and said, "All right, pay up." I blinked at him and I said, "Wait, what?" He then said to me, "Oh, you don't have the money? Well, I'll give it to you on one condition. You will fix your ear." His voice at this moment was deep and demanding, loud but not yelling, but still firm. I then started crying and I ran out of the store. And I literally ran the 5 kilometers back home. When I told my mom, she was livid. She stormed downstairs, pounded on his door until he opened up, and they argued for a long time. When she came back, she was in tears, but she told me I had done the right thing. The next day, my grandfather acted completely normal again. He picked me up from school, he was super friendly, and he told me that he had a surprise for me. On one hand, I knew he was up to something. On the other hand, he had taught me from a young age to use people for what they could offer. So I got in the car hoping for another fun day, but instead he drove me to a private health clinic. Once inside, he introduced me to his friend, a plastic surgeon. They talked for a while before the surgeon took my measurements, and then, just before signing the documents, the surgeon turned to me and asked, "Which one of you wants this surgery today?" At this point, I was frozen. My grandfather then immediately answered, "He does, he's just nervous." I then pointed at him and I held back my tears, and at this point, the doctor frowned. Well, I can't perform surgery if the patient doesn't want it. My grandfather then lied and said that he was my legal guardian, stating that it's because my parents were dead. He tried to fake documents to authorize the surgery, but thankfully the doctor refused. Now at that point, I completely broke down, terrified that something had happened to my mom. My grandfather sighed, drove me home without saying a word again, and handed me off to my mom, who had no idea where I'd been. And that moment was the breaking point for everything. We went low contact with him for a few years, or possibly he was punishing us by ignoring us as he tended to do that. Well, eventually, even I needed braces, and he offered to pay for them. We were tight on money, so my mom reluctantly agreed. He promised to cover half the cost, but in reality, he paid for half of my top braces and a quarter of the bottom ones. And not to mention, how he didn't think it was necessary to pay $20 every 2 weeks for a couple of years for tightening. He still, every couple of months or so, tried to bribe me to get the surgery, or to accept money as a loan that I didn't need to try and pay him back, or any other way that he could think of to get control over me. Even now, years later, he still is trying to control me. I mean, I moved to a different country after college just to get away from him. I have no job yet, my savings are drained, and almost like he sensed it, he reached out last week. He said to me, "Do you want $10,000? All you have to do is get this quick, simple surgery and the money is yours." But you know what? I didn't even reply. After the incident at the clinic, my grandfather went on a smear campaign, telling our extended family that my mom, his own daughter, had somehow turned me against my loving and caring grandfather. And you know what? Most of them believed him. My mom and I were banned from family gatherings, holidays, and celebrations, and he even told us that we had no right to use our own last name anymore, with the only person who stayed on our side being my grandmother. I know this was a lot, and I'm so sorry for dumping it all on you guys, but I needed to tell somebody. The last 2 therapists I saw sided with him, so I feel like I have no one unbiased to talk to. And just to be clear, I will never get this surgery and I will never take his money ever in my life. Wow, your grandfather's a piece of garbage. Seriously, this guy's trying to be like, "Oh, you need to fix your ear. Here's all the money in the world. Get it done because I want it done." First of all, it's not that big of a deal, and secondly, this is not his body. He does not have a say over what you can and cannot do with it. So if you don't want to get that surgery, then congratulations, don't get it. I mean, this guy even went as far as taking you to a clinic and saying, "Okay, we're here to get surgery done." It's like, no, dude, you can't do that to somebody. So in my opinion, I think it's probably a good thing that you don't have to deal with your grandfather anymore, or at least you know exactly exactly the kind of person he is, because I know if I was in your shoes, I would cut him off completely. I would not only never talk to him again, but I would also fix my reputation amongst the family. I would tell them exactly what he did to me. I would spare no details, and I would literally be like, look, this is exactly what happened. Because what he did to you, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable, and there's honestly no good excuse for any of that. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by making my girlfriend think that I was cheating on her, but in reality, I was planning a surprise engagement with her and her family, despite the fact that she thought I was cheating on her with her best friend. Here's what happened. Alright, so this actually happened over the weekend, and I'm still a bit shaken and relieved writing this. So my girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years, and I wanted to do something really special for her birthday coming up. I decided I would plan a surprise party and propose to her at the party in front of our friends and family. And yes, I know, this definitely is very ambitious. The past few weeks, I've been sneaking around organizing everything. I bought a ring, conspired with her best friend, and even had secret calls with her parents to get their blessing. I was so excited, and I was sure it would be an epic surprise. Well, the mess up began with all the secretive behavior this required. I am usually an open book, but suddenly I'm hiding my phone, texting people behind her back, and making up lame excuses to duck out of the house. I thought I was being slick to avoid spoiling the surprise, but in reality, I was acting really sketchy. Her best friend who's helping me plan messaged me something like, hey, I can't wait to see you to go over the final details. And this is while my girlfriend was borrowing my phone to play a song. I snatched the phone back so fast and pretended that it was a work message, but this was a mistake. At that point, I officially raised every suspicious red flag possible, and I could feel her side-eyeing me for the rest of the night. Over the next few days, I noticed my girlfriend getting quiet and anxious. I tried to play it cool, but I was often rushing off to take calls from the party venue or whispering to her friends about party preparation. She then started asking me strange questions. Stuff like, everything okay between us? And I just nervously laughed it off, which only made me look guiltier. I was this close to the finish line, so I figured it would be fine once I pulled off the surprise. You know, if I could avoid looking like a cheating jerk for 2 more days. Well, last Friday, it all came crashing down. I came home and found my girlfriend in tears holding an iPad. Now, here's a pro tip for you. If you have Apple devices, they all get your iMessages. And basically, she had seen some of my message exchanges with her best friend about the plan and keeping it a secret. Now, one out of context line from me said, hey, I can't wait to finally do this. It's so hard to keep lying to my girlfriend. Now, for clarity, I meant lying to her about why I was busy, but my God, out of context, it looks so bad. She then confronted me sobbing, thinking I was having an affair with her best friend or something like that. She was shaking and my heart absolutely dropped into my stomach. I then started panicking, trying to explain it's not what you think. It took me a solid minute to get her to stop yelling and just listen. I was literally on my knees, not exactly how I planned this, trying to calm her down and tell her the truth. I said to her, I swear I was lying because I'm trying to plan a surprise for you. Please just open that closet. She was still confused and sniffling and crying, and she opened the closet where I hid the birthday gift bag and the ring box inside. She turned back to me and I just blurted out everything. The party, the proposal, how her friend and parents were in on it, and that I'm an idiot. She then went from angry crying to shocked crying, and finally started to happy crying once it all clicked in place. I ended up officially proposing to her right then and there on our living room floor, because why not at that point? Not the most grand romantic gesture I envisioned, but the ring made it on her finger. She said yes through a lot of tears and a half laugh at how absurd the whole situation was, and we just sat on the floor hugging each other, both of us just kind of trembling, her from the emotional roller coaster I put her on, and me from narrowly avoiding complete disaster. Later on, when things calmed down, she did kind of scold me by saying, you dummy, I really thought you were cheating, you scared me, which is fair. I feel like a total jerk for putting her through that. We also had a laugh when she realized that her best friend's winky face emojis and our text messages were about the cake and decorations and not about secret hookups. In the end, we decided to still go through the birthday party that night and act like the proposal was a surprise in front of our friends. It was awkwardly hilarious because everyone but her thought that she was genuinely surprised when I got down on one knee. I mean, they had no idea she'd found out beforehand. And you know what? We haven't told that part of the story to our families yet. And for now, that little fiasco is just gonna be between me and the internet. Wow, talk about turning a possibly disastrous situation into a really good one. I completely understand where the girlfriend's coming from too, by the way. This looks really sketchy from her perspective. She sees you sneaking around, talking to her best friend via text messaging, and just all around acting shady and really secretive. And that, in my opinion, would set anybody's alarm bells off in their head. So good for you for fixing this possible disaster, because this really could have fallen apart in the worst way possible. My younger brother's girlfriend said something that made me incredibly uncomfortable. But now, even months later, this is still a problem in my family's lives as they constantly bring this up and criticize her for what she said. And as a result, I feel like I'm at a breaking point because I literally just want things to go back to the way they were. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, for a bit of background, my brother, who we will call John, is very different from me. And honestly, it's always been that way. I'm a nerdy guy who likes to play Dungeons and Dragons and someone who works from home coding websites. He's always been sporty and has one of those corporate office jobs where I swear half of his work is just playing golf and going to fancy lunches. We didn't always get along, but these days we are on pretty good terms. He started dating his girlfriend, who we will call Jane, a few years back during what was a pretty low point for me in my life. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship that had ended anything but amicably, was burning out of the career I went to college for, and in general was about 2 paychecks away from having to move in with my folks. The stress of it all was taking a toll on my body. I went from the lightly chubby that I'd been my entire life to just straight up fat. And shortly after the breakup, I had an anxiety attack so bad, it put me in the hospital. So basically, it was not a good time to get to know me. I was basically the picture of your messed up older brother. But you know what? I turned it around. I got the mental health assistance that I needed to diagnose and treat some long-standing issues. With that as a springboard, I started exercising more and eating better, finding cooking to be a good hobby that also led to me eating less takeout and processed food. I'm still no Adonis and I've still got a bit of a tummy, but I'm much stronger and I feel better. I was able to quit my job and find a new one in a field that I never considered, but that I found I loved enough that I'm going back to school to work on my PhD in the fall so that I can pursue it in a greater extent. And finally, I started dating again. Someone who, for the sake of the story, I'll call Flo, turned out to be a much better match for me than my ex, which all brings us to the night where things went wrong. We have a family gathering at my parents' house, extended family and all, plus we had Jane and Flo over. And for this event, I'm making dinner, which is beef Wellington. Everyone is raving about my food. And for reference, I also did dinner this past Thanksgiving as well. They're also talking about my recent glow up, my new job, the program I got into, etc. I'm smiling politely and mostly just trying to do a bunch of dinner prep while they just won't get out of my way. Then Jane says to me, "Yeah, never thought I picked the wrong brother, but I'm starting to think that I might have." When she said that, you could literally hear a pin drop. I said nothing again and just awkwardly laughed at what I assumed to have been a bad joke. Jane's face then immediately changed to the look of someone who had just realized their mess up. John looked pissed off, and the two of them left the kitchen shortly afterwards. From what I could see, she seemed to be trying to apologize to him, while he looked really hurt. My relatives said nothing. Not immediately anyways. Flo just kind of winced, and later told me that it was really awkward having to stand there, but she didn't know what else to do that would have escalated things or put me on the spot. Well, that was over 2 months ago, and both John and Jane avoid me like the plague. Not even a text message ever since then. Whenever I meet up with my relatives, they badmouth her over it. And while I think Jane did mess up saying that, I really do think she was just trying to make a bad joke. Personally, I think they're overreacting. This aside, I think she's probably the first person he's ever dated who was a fit for him in terms of personality and lifestyle. The only person being normal about it is Flo, who thinks it was weird, but like me, just a dumb thing to say. She's not even jealous about the situation. She knows Jane isn't my type. So seriously, how do I clear the air with Jane and John and finally get people to stop bringing this up? I'm sick of hearing about it and I just want things to go back to how they were before. Right now, it just feels like a dark cloud over all our interactions. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Oh man, this is really annoying because I think you're exactly right. I think maybe she just made a bad joke and it flopped really bad. And now everybody's making a bigger deal out of this than there needs to be. Like that, in my opinion, is way worse than what she said because it really seems like they're just using that as an excuse to treat her like crap. And that is really not fair. Like seriously, that's not fair. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be taking the chance to look at these people and say, hey, you really need to stop talking like this because it's not good. I would even go to different family members in private and be like, listen, can we please stop this? This is weird and I don't like it and I don't agree with what you're doing. And then maybe that can like help mitigate things a little bit because I think at the end of the day, Jane just literally put her foot in her mouth. And now people are pretty much just throwing this way out of proportion. My dad keeps self-inviting himself on my trips across Europe and other places, where he literally shows up unannounced and basically interrupts all my plans right then and there. And I'm at a point where it keeps happening and it's honestly so annoying. And at this point, I don't know what to do. To start things off, I'm 30 years old with no siblings and a good relationship with my parents. I live a 2-hour flight away from my parents, and it's important to know that I love traveling. But ever since my early 20s, I'm always very uncomfortable telling my parents where I'm going next. I did a couple of trips with a friend in my early 20s, and my dad showed up in a surprising way. way. One time it was in a European country and the other one was in Thailand for a few days. And he continued the vacation by himself and we went for dinner. My dad loves traveling and my mom doesn't want to leave the country. So I guess from his perspective, when I go places, he has an opportunity to travel without being alone. I can't understand that, but I'm also very independent. And I'm 30, not over 60. The problem is that he always operates in the same way. I know every time I say I'm going somewhere, he is going to start checking how much a flight is for him. He won't ask if he can join, and instead he would appear as a surprise, self-inviting himself thinking that this is cool. For example, one time I said I was going with my boyfriend at the time to Paris, and he messaged me a few days later that he had everything planned to show up and wanted to know locations of my hotel. Now mind you, this was Paris in my 20s with my first official boyfriend, and he did not have the filter to understand that he was not invited, and at least that time I was able to avoid it since he needed some information. Recently, I went on a long weekend to Iceland by myself, and he made a comment that I should have told him about it earlier so that he could join me. The way I've been dealing with this is for a quick weekend trip in Europe sometimes, where I just don't tell anybody anything. For the rest, I tell them 1 or 2 days in advance only, so there's not that much time for him to plan out or think about it. I am so tired that every single time I get excited and have a trip planned, I spend weeks overthinking this, considering how and when I'm gonna have to avoid this happening. I am going to China for a week, and I haven't told him about this yet, but I keep getting weird dreams about this topic. He likes Asia and has been there a few times, so I see it as high risk, and I'm stressing out about it. I love him, but I really just don't like traveling with him. We have different ways and opinions, and at this point, I'm seriously not sure what to do. Yeah, I can understand why this would be really weird, because that just doesn't sound like a fun time. Seriously, he's interrupting your plans. He's literally getting involved in ways that you don't want him to get involved. And to that end, I don't blame you for being upset. But I do think that this is one of those situations where, like, yeah, you probably need to talk to him straight up and just straight up say that you don't want him showing up to any of your vacation plans. I would just tell him straight up that it's making you uncomfortable and you don't want to deal with that. Because what you're describing sounds really annoying, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. Am I the jerk for removing my cousin from my PC after they literally logged me out of a program that I needed to stay into, resulting in my cousin crying to his mother and me being painted as the bad guy? Here's what happened. Okay, so my uncle and his kids used to come over every single weekend, and they told their children it was okay to do whatever they wanted in my room, including taking my things. And one night, my cousin parked himself in front of my PC, all without asking if he could use it first. I see that he logs me out of a program, so I tell him to wait so I can log in again. He just responds that no, he didn't need to wait. Then for a full 15 minutes, I tell him to pause the YouTube video that he was watching, and I try to pause the video myself, but he just shoved my hands away from the mouse. Every time I told him to wait, he would also just yell at me. Eventually, I said, "Get your act together or leave." And that didn't even receive a response. So at that point, I just turned off the PC. Immediately, he turned on the crocodile tears and ran to his mom. I explained I only wanted him to pause so I could log into a program that he logged me out of. She responded and said, "So you just had to do that while he was sitting there?" I responded back by saying it's actually my stuff he's sitting at. She then said to me, "Okay, nice. Well, we will remember that." For reference, before that, I wasn't even allowed to touch a Rubik's Cube when I was at their place. In fact, I got told by my cousin that I'm not allowed to touch their stuff. So I angrily went to my room and I shut the door. I then overheard my grandma, who was living there with us at the time, saying that she can't say that I've been mean to the kids. My cousin's mom then says, "Well, I've been patient with him for a long time." And also, apparently my cousin has been telling his mom that I've been mean and said mean things, which I never did. They eventually discovered that he had been lying about me for a long time, but of course, I never got an apology. She then says to my grandma as she was at the door ready to leave, she said, "I think this is the case. I believe he isn't confident with people his own age, so he has to compensate for that by attacking the kids." So am I the jerk in this situation for making my cousin cry, even though he was messing with my stuff? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, no, you are definitely not the jerk, and it's incredibly strange to me that your uncle and his wife would be like, "Oh yeah, use whatever you want. You could do anything in that room. Don't even worry about it." Even going as far as being like, "Oh yeah, you can steal from your cousin." Like at that point, I would lock down the entire room and change the password on the PC and everything. I would make it so they could never get into that ever again, because why should you let them? Like seriously, these people have completely violated your privacy and have taken it upon themselves to treat you like garbage. And that, in my opinion, is incredibly toxic, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. My entitled regional and district manager at McDonald's say that they will fire me if I don't leave my break time early and help out with a rush. But I decided to maliciously comply and get some petty revenge, as I instead threw these rules right back at their face in a way that would make them lose thousands of dollars, all because of some stupid rules that they made. Here's what happened. So this happened a few years ago when I worked at McDonald's. The one I worked in was near a bunch of schools, so most of the staff was high school kids. As summer vacation started, we began having the trouble of an employee getting a break and then spending their break eating their meal and conversating with their friends who were still working in the kitchen. It was having a seriously bad effect on productivity as well as posing quite a few health risks. So our manager finally initiated a rule that if you were on your break, you couldn't leave the break room until your break was over. And this went swimmingly until the kids went back to school. We then had a new problem. Short staffing during break cycles meant our ticket times would skyrocket during rushes. Management then lifted the rules so that employees on break could clock in early and help out with the rush. However, the district manager didn't like the implications of employees working shortened or no break shifts and forcefully reinstated the rule. They also doubled down by saying that employees who tried to work during their scheduled break would be written up or even terminated for doing so. And so this is where our malicious compliance comes into play. And trust me, this is a good one. The date was 4/20, which is a day that nobody wants to be working at a fast food place, much less McDonald's. We had been getting slammed so hard from the open of the store that we called in extra help from other stores, including the regional and district managers. As the break cycle began, the management was pleased with the sub 2-minute ticket times that they had managed to maintain. We had a few breaks though, and we were managing well. Then came my break. As soon as I sat down to eat, someone came into the store and ordered 47 double quarter pounders, and then immediately after that order, someone in the drive-thru ordered 75 20-piece nugget meals. The amount of panic in the kitchen was palpable. I was comfortably lounging in a chair, browsing my phone, and enjoying my meal while the kitchen struggled to keep up with the orders. As ticket times began to soar, the management did exactly as I expected. The district manager came into the break room and demanded me to end my break early and help in the kitchen. But my response was simple. I'm sorry, but according to the rules you made, I could be written up or terminated for completing your request. Then, after I said that, I continued browsing my phone, trying to enjoy the last 10 minutes of my break. The regional manager then entered the room and said that he would personally terminate me if I didn't do the thing I wasn't supposed to do. The other employee who was on break with me immediately rose and clocked in, despite still having 10 minutes left on her break. She was then written up for breaking the rule after the shift was over, so I felt good sitting in my chair and continuing to ignore them. In the aftermath, the people who made the giant orders took what was made after half an hour and left with refunds for unmade food, and we're talking maybe $150 each. And customers who were waiting for smaller orders were compensated with gift cards for their patience, and yet many walked out without even getting their orders. In fact, we paid out nearly $1,500 in gift cards. Now, because customers were walking out on orders without collecting them, we had nearly $5,000 in food wasted that night. All of the closers went home with nearly 2 bundle boxes of burgers, fries, and nuggets. Well, the regional and district manager were moved to a different region, and the rule was edited to say that you were able to clock back in early at the manager's discretion in the event of a rush. Because I was the only employee who held his ground against the regional and district managers during the rush, I was rewarded with free meals and drinks until I moved away from my hometown and simply couldn't eat at that McDonald's anymore, because this experience was truly exhausting. Wow, I love the double standards here because this is honestly so unbelievable. The district and regional manager both are like, listen, I need you to break the rules or else I'm gonna break the rules by firing you. And it's like, dude, instead of complaining to me, maybe pick up an apron and do the work yourself. Like, if these people actually cared about their job and getting these people through and getting their orders to them, then they would roll their sleeves up and help out. But instead, it's pretty obvious they'd rather drag you into it and be like, no, you do this. And that is really unfair in my opinion, and I just don't blame you for being annoyed by this. So good for you for getting some petty revenge, as well as like throwing this right back in their face. Because from the sounds of it, these people absolutely deserve it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My mom meddled in my first job and ruined our relationship, and I'm now at a breaking point and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Months ago, I graduated college and I got my first job. For reference, I'm 22 years old and my mom is 60. I would tell my mom how miserable the job was making me, but she would ignore my pain and say that I should keep the job for at least a year so I don't look like a job hopper. She continued putting so much pressure on me to keep the job that eventually I simply couldn't take it anymore. So I came up with a plan to do 2 weeks of work off the clock so that I could just quit and leave. My mom was happy about me doing that, which looking back, I find absolutely repulsive. When I quit the job, my boss, who was a 70-year-old female, was super mad mad at me and demanded that I do more tasks and went as far as contacting my mom and sending my mom the list of things that she wanted me to do. And you know what? My mom took my boss's side. My mom could have ignored my boss's text messages and could have let me be the adult and handle it myself, but she had to insert herself as the authority in the situation and monitor me and put as much pressure on me as possible so that I would obey her and my boss. My mom even threatened to erase my hard drives, which had all of my most important memories and projects on them. I then wrote my mom a letter to say how much she hurt me, which made her more rageful, and she threatened to abandon me and make me pay her mortgage since she would be gone. But I'm used to her threats of abandonment. It's kind of typical. So eventually I gave in and I dropped it and we just moved on. Since then, she would bring up my first boss into any and all conversations, thinking that there weren't still any hurt feelings and we could just laugh about it. I would be tremendously triggered, but I'd hide it and just carry on. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I said, I don't want you bringing up my first boss. I don't find it funny. And she sort of respected my wishes. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have to forbid my mom from speaking about certain topics because we'd have all our hardships resolved, but we never resolved this hardship and it was festering into a landmine that makes me bitter for days when she brings it up because she still has never acknowledged her wrongs or has shown any remorse for meddling and causing damage that I still have to live with. I want to talk to her about it, but it will cause a war. But I feel like I can only let go of my resentment by receiving closure and finally resolving the situation. What should I do? Oh man, if this was me, I would absolutely be looking to move out. The original poster clarified that yes, they do live with their mom still, and that in my opinion is crazy. Like seriously, she meddled in your first job and literally like ruined everything for you. They also go on to explain that their former boss found out about their mom by literally going to the emergency contact and contacting her that way. And that is crazy toxic. Like you already quit that job, you gave them 2 weeks notice. So the fact that your old boss and your mom all pretty much like teamed up against you is just so weird. And she's now bringing it up all the time like it's some funny thing. But it's like, no dude, you literally did not apologize for this. So I think if I was in your shoes, I would be trying to move out as soon as possible because what she did to you, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My entitled managers make my life a living nightmare after they make a big fuss out of me taking time off of work because of strep throat. But in reality, I find out I have cancer, putting them in their place in a way that they truly did not expect. Here's what happened. In 2010, I worked at a corner drugstore as a department lead. I was 22, I did the bare minimum, and I hated working Sundays, which were basically my Fridays. I will be the first to admit that I could have been a better employee, but I knew this wouldn't be my career and I was just coasting until I graduated. Sunday, May the 2nd rolls around and I felt awful. I had already not been feeling great, and that Friday I was a bit under the weather. When Saturday came around, I felt pretty okay, but then Sunday hit like a stack of bricks. About 2 hours into my shift, I asked my manager, who we will call Ryan, if I could go home. The guys in management despised me, so I was not surprised when this particular manager pretty much snarkily responded by saying, "You need to get someone to come in and finish your shift." And it's like, fine, okay, no problem. So I called one of my coworkers and she came in for me. My boyfriend at the time was working at a hotel down the street, and we also shared a car, so I went to his hotel to sleep until he got off of work. I slept in the lobby for 9 hours straight, but when we made it home, I started coughing up blood. My boyfriend then forced me to go to the ER that night, and it was there that I was diagnosed with strep and admitted to the hospital. That Monday on the 3rd, one of the nurses informed me that I would be in the hospital for at least a week, so I called the store to let them know. The manager I spoke with, who we will call Brad, hated me more than anyone else at that store. I told him the news and he said to me, "You'll be out for a week because of strep throat?" I then said to him, "Yeah, do you want to talk to the nurse? She's right here." Brad responded by saying, "No, we'll see you back when you get back." He was clearly irritated by the news, but there was nothing I could do about it. Now, what I hadn't told him, as I didn't know at the time, is that I was admitted because the hospital suspected I had something much worse. I was visited by a doctor on Monday who explained that he'd like to perform a bone marrow biopsy. Now, I had no idea what that was or why he would want to do one, except that my blood count looks really weird. I had the procedure done and continue recovering from strep, and on Tuesday, May 4th, the doctor from the day before pays me another visit. They say that they got the results back, and apparently I've got an aggressive form of leukemia that requires immediate treatment. They then said that they'll be sending me to a hospital in a big city to start chemo tonight. Well, my world was turned upside down. I called my best friends, all of whom I worked with, and I invited them to the hospital to share the news. One of my friends had a shift that afternoon and broke the news to the store. They said that I had cancer. I then spent 28 arduous days in the hospital fighting for my life. My mom had visited my store a few times during my hospital stay and talked with my store manager, letting her know what was going on. My manager was very understanding and supportive, but the other managers never said a word to me, my mom, or my friends about about the situation. When I finally got out of the hospital, I went to my old store to pick up my maintenance cancer medications. As I made my way back towards the pharmacy, where I was bruised, bald, with a bright purple PICC line sticking out of my arm, I turned down aisle 10, and who do I just so happen to see? None other than Ryan stocking the vitamins. I say gleefully, "Oh, hi, Ryan." And trust me when I say this, the look on his face was priceless. Ryan says to me, "Oh my God, are you okay? How are you feeling?" I said to him, "I'm great now, thank you. It's a good thing I left early that Sunday and ended up in the hospital, so they found the cancer." And you know what? The whole situation was absolutely delicious. Despite everything I went through, the feeling of complete vindication when they had to face my cancer-ridden self was incredible. I never ended up going back to work there, and I had to file for disability because the next 5 months of my life were week-long hospital stays, followed by constant transfusions, checkups, and even a case of sepsis that almost took me out. But either way, I still remember Ryan's face, and it all still brings a smile to mine. Wow, talk about like the best unintentional revenge you could possibly have. I think anybody who's worked a job can understand that sometimes you just have coworkers who suck. They hate you for no reason, and it really is so frustrating to deal with. And to that extent, I'm sure it felt really good to get back at Ryan and Brad in a way that you probably did not expect. Like seriously, Brad was acting like, "Oh, you're in the hospital for strep throat?" It's like, "No, dude, I've got cancer. I just don't know it yet." And what kind of manager would be like, "Oh, wow, whatever. We'll see you when you get back." Or even like wish you well and be like, "Oh, I hope you get better soon." Like the both of them are giant pieces of garbage, and that is so uncalled for. So I'm glad you're better, and I'm glad you got your revenge, because those two guys absolutely deserved it. My parents are so distant from me that it really breaks my heart that they weren't there for me in my time of need. And now I honestly don't know what to do. Okay, so my parents have always been very nonchalant when it came to me. Being the eldest of 3 siblings, I always got the least amount of love and attention with the most amount of responsibility. I think I knew that growing up, but didn't really let it affect me too much. While my 2 siblings needed more attention, I was pretty sidelined. Again, I didn't recognize that too much, or rather suppressed it enough. I dormed for when I was 18, followed by living on my own and then with my husband. My mother would only call me if I called her, never once visited my dorm or my apartment, and now only has been to my house 2 times. And you know what? I adored my family. My dad was in the military, so we were his luggage our whole lives, moving from 6 different countries and 4 states by the time I was a teenager. I mean, they are all that I have. Just the 5 of us. I didn't bother making friends because what's the point? We were just gonna be moving again. I didn't have any other family around me, so it was honestly just them. Now, this next part is what made me realize that I needed to take a break from them. My husband and I recently started trying for a baby, and a couple of weeks ago got pregnant, and within a week had a miscarriage. Emotionally, it was sad, but physically, it was one of the worst pains I've ever been through. In fact, the miscarriage wasn't complete, so they had to intervene with medicine. So for the first 3 days pre-medication, I had a lot of pain, some fever, some chills, followed by taking the medication for another 4 days, which was an absolute nightmare. I mean, my husband had to literally hold me down as I screamed viscerally out of pain. When the miscarriage initially happened, I had let my mother know about it, and honestly, I just don't know. I half expected her to maybe come and see me, or even help me with a little bit of food or something like that. For reference, we live about 17 minutes away from their house by car, but during those 2 weeks, she only called me twice. When I texted her why she didn't stop by, when she told me that she would in one of the calls, she said that I didn't call her back to confirm. And mind you, I had a fever of 102 degrees Fahrenheit. I've seen my mother make heaps of food and dishes when her friends are sick, or when her friend had just moved into a new house and their kitchen had not been set up yet. And even still, there she was with multiple dishes at tow. When her friend's daughter was too pregnant to do anything, she cooked a week's worth of food for her. But her own daughter was in pain, going through something emotionally and physically breaking. And yet still, I got nothing besides what, 2 calls? I know I have pretty much taken care of myself my entire life. I always said I don't need anybody else, and I lived by myself for years. In fact, I've been through any heartache or life issues by myself, but this, however, I honestly just don't know how to feel, because this feels so much more painful. This hurts a lot, and I'm not sure why. I cried so much. I mean, maybe it's the hormones, not having any other family to rely on, no aunties or cousins. Even my dad works a lot and is not very emotionally available, and my siblings are too self-involved for me to even confide in them. I thought that my mom might want to be there for me, so that is why this hurts so bad. Since the 2 calls weeks ago, I haven't even bothered calling her. Today she called me, and you know what? I just didn't pick up. I think I just need a little break from her and from all of them. This is going to sound insane, but I've been fantasizing about pulling a Julia Roberts character from Sleeping with the Enemy and just relocate and leave everyone here behind. New name, new stories, new friends, everything. It's been a semi-toxic disassociating cope, even though weirdly enough, it does put me at ease. What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, I am so sorry this happened to you. Really, like that is so hard, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through that literally by yourself. Your mom wasn't even there for you, and literally nobody else in the family even like gave a crap to like talk to you about it. And I can only imagine what that's like, and truly, from the bottom of my heart, I really am so sorry that you had to deal with that. So with all things considered, I don't blame you for taking a step away and trying to have like some kind of distance, because if I went through something even remotely close to that, which I don't think I ever will, and I had family who just didn't care and didn't reach out, I would be heartbroken as well. So your feelings are definitely justified, and hopefully this all works out, because the way your mom treated you is completely unfair. Am I the jerk for not offering to split gas money on a road trip that I literally did not even want to go on? Because right now I feel bad, and I seriously am not sure if I'm in the wrong. Here's what happened. Okay, so last weekend, I, a 24-year-old female, got dragged into a spontaneous hiking trip with my friends who we will call Jason and Lily. And for reference, they are a couple. We were hanging out Friday night at their place, and I was already half dead from the work week, and I had way too much wine, so I just crashed on their couch. Saturday morning, I was super hungover, like dry mouth, hoodie over eyes level. All I wanted was some water, maybe a hash brown, and no human interaction. But Jason was already up and buzzing about this hike 4 hours away. And you know what? Lily was into it too. I said very clearly multiple times, I'm down to hang out, but I'm not hiking. I feel like crap. Well, they were like, oh, come on, you'll feel better once you're out there. It's mostly all flat. Well, I didn't push back hard enough, I guess, and I wasn't trying to be a buzzkill, because the next thing I know, we're in Jason's car, and I'm wedged in the back with my hood up and a bottle of Gatorade. Now, as a bit of a spoiler for the story, I never hiked. We got there, I walked to the trailhead, and then I just sat in the car with the windows cracked, reading a paperback I found in the back seat. They were gone for about 3 hours, and they came back very sweaty and glowing and very into themselves. I clapped politely, and then we drove back. Then, on the drive home, Jason says as casual as possible, so if you guys could Venmo me $30 for gas, that would be great. I then hesitantly said, wait, are you serious? I told him that I didn't really feel comfortable paying for a trip that I didn't want to go on and didn't even participate in. I said it as lightly as I could. Like I even added a half laugh so it didn't sound rude, but neither of them responded. It then got weirdly quiet after that. Like not just, oh, we're tired quiet, but stiff, polite quiet. Lily scrolled through Instagram the rest of the ride. Jason turned the music up and didn't really talk to me again until they dropped me off. I texted later that night just to say thanks for driving anyways, and Lily replied with a thumbs up emoji. Not even like a no problem or anything like that, but literally just a thumbs up. I've been replaying it in my head because I do get that gas isn't free, but also I didn't want to go, and I said that and I barely even left the car. I felt like I'd been held financially hostage for a vibe I wasn't part of. So seriously, am I the jerk for not paying gas money for a trip I got peer pressured into and didn't even get a chance to enjoy? Because right now I'm not sure what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk. This honestly, in my opinion, is so toxic. You mean to tell me that they drag you along on this trip, leave you in the car with like nothing but like a cracked window and a book to read, and then when they're driving back expect you to pay for gas? Like no, I don't think so. That's not happening. That sounds like an awful plan, and I can't believe they try to like guilt trip you into doing that. I think in the long run, it would be good to like set boundaries more firmly and tell them, hey, if I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. And that probably could have helped you avoid this situation entirely, but in my opinion, these guys are absolutely the jerks, because they literally went on this hike and left you alone. And the fact that you didn't even participate in it and you were basically just like an unwilling accomplice, in my opinion, is the biggest indication that this is nothing that you need to pay for. An entitled college student gets her laptop repaired, but then she never picks it up, forcing my brother to sell the item off as his policy pretty much dictates that he has to do so, resulting in this lady demanding $2,000 from my brother even though she abandoned the product at his store. Here's what happened. Okay, so my brother Nate runs a shop in our small town that offers electronic repairs. Last year around June or July, this girl came into his shop needing her laptop repaired. It was an Alienware gaming laptop and it looked relatively new. The girl said that the battery wasn't charging anymore, and Nate said it looked like something was inserted into the charging port that shouldn't have been, and the port had been damaged. Nate told her that he would have to order parts and it might take a week or more before it's fixed. Now she said it was fine and started filling out all the paperwork. She then mentioned that she wouldn't be in town to pick it up, so the phone number was for her mother and she could come and get the laptop when it was ready. Nate said that that was fine and he would put a note in the system. Well, fast forward 3 weeks and it was finally fixed. Nate then goes to call the number and it says that the number has been disconnected. We live in a small town, but neither of us recognize this girl to try and track down her folks, so it just sat for a few months. Nate also has a policy in the contract that basically says that any repaired item not picked up within 90 days of completed service will be put up for sale by the business and can be sold. Well, Nate was generous and gave her an additional month before putting it up for sale. He then got an offer the same day he put it on the shelf, and it was sold as a refurbished item. Well, fast forward to last Thursday, and the girl finally showed up to get the laptop. She left to go to college and was in town for a long weekend and found out her mom never got the laptop. It turns out the girl wrote down the wrong number, and obviously she was pissed off that it got sold and is now demanding my brother to pay her $2,000 so that she can buy a new one. And we're honestly still blown away by her entitlement because this is truly ridiculous. Yeah, the lady in this story is a complete moron. Like, there's no way she didn't know about this policy. And the fact that she didn't follow up with her mom and be like, hey, did you pick up my laptop? Instead of waiting, oh, I don't know, several months later, to me shows how irresponsible she is and how dumb she is. Because I don't know about you, but there's no way I would ever let a $2,000 laptop sit there and not have anybody pick it up, or at least account for it in some kind of way. I would be calling my mom constantly and be like, hey, can you check on that laptop or something like that? And it's also stupid that she completely wrote down the wrong number. It's like, my God, how is Nate or anybody at that store supposed to get anything to your mom? So yeah, that lady's a complete moron for doing this way, and she has no right to try and claim $2,000 from your brother, because this literally is her own fault since she's the one who put down the wrong phone number. Thanks for watching. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and also please subscribe to Am I the Genius? I think you're gonna love what they're making over there. It's a great channel and you should definitely check it out. Everything will be linked down below in the description. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.